2-1 pitch. Swing, high fly ball, right center. That one's going a long way. We are tied. High towering fly to right. Tucker going back as far as he can go. Noot hits a 2-run bomb off the back wall of the bullpen. Swing and a towering fly ball to left. Back goes Suzuki. Twisting, turning. He won't get it. That's in the bullpen. Mason Wynn makes it a 1-run game. They punch. We counterpunch. Little chopper. Nolan has to avoid the base runner. Throws the fence. He got him. What a play. The Cardinals beat the Cubs 8-7 in a game that had a little bit of everything.
That is what it sounded like last night on FanDuel Sports Midwest. Alex, I don't know how you felt about the game as you were watching it last night. I thought that was the game of the year so far. And I'm saying that because you take into account all of the context on what this series means for the Cardinals, right? It's the Cubs for the first time this season. They're in your house. You're stacking yourself up against what had been one of the best in the National League. And I think for much of this season, we go into each of these individual series, whether it's against the Mets, the Phillies, the Dodgers, and you say to yourself, all right, how do the Cardinals stack up? Early on in the season, the test against the Mets, they didn't just not stack up. They failed spectacularly, throwing up all over themselves. But then, since then, they have stacked up against every single one of these teams that they've gone up against. And it's like, all right, maybe this is going to be the time where it works. And then they go through that weird downward spiral, and it's like, oh, man, well, season's coming to an end. They get it back on track against the White Sox, and now it looks like they're starting to have a little bit of momentum once again. So last night, whether it was Mason Wynn scoring from second on a sac fly, or Alec Burleson's catch up against this netting, or Nolan Arenado, that final play that he was able to make, the home run power that apparently they have, which hasn't shown itself all season long, but as the summer heat is here, now the Cardinals are getting hot again. I thought it was awesome. I loved every second of that game. It was amazing to watch come back once again. What was your biggest reaction from last night's game? Cardinals win it once again, start out the series 2-0 against the Cubbies.
I mean, it was cinema-esque. Like, everything you would want from a baseball game, you saw. You had incredible defense, you had incredible base running, you had blunders, you had big moments with the bat, and you had the comeback. Like, the comeback Cardinals is a real title for this team right now.
No doubt.
Because the other game of the year prior to this one, and I agree with you, this is it, was the game that they were down by 4 runs, and I thought it was over, and then they just stormed through with 5 in a row to get on top once again. Especially on home field, I don't know if this team can get beat. Like, that's where it feels like with the Cardinals. When they're in Busch Stadium, they seem to excel. And that was one of those games that, look, the Chicago Cubs, I think, were the darling in the NL for the longest time. Like, everyone saw them at the beginning of the season, Kyle Tucker, all of these young players, Pete Crow Armstrong, and people were like, that's going to be the team to beat. Well, the Cardinals are doing it. I said on Monday that this series feels like it's going to change the narrative for both sides. If the Cardinals pick up another win tonight and win this series, I think the narrative is going to shift to the Cardinals might be the problem in the NL Central, because whether it's their offense from top to bottom, now you've got guys that are coming through that were in cold spells, Lars Noot. Your pitching was not great last night, but you found a way to manage, and your defense is elite right now.
It's back to what it was at the beginning of the season.
Alec Burleson's making freaking highlight reel plays.
Not one, but 2. Yeah. One diving, one at the netting. Just ridiculous.
And then you got Nolan Arenado at the end of this. We'll get to him momentarily, but it's like the dude that so many people wanted out of St. Louis might be the one that's saving your season in the last 3 weeks. Again, this was cinema baseball last night, and it feels like that's where the Cardinals are on the uprise.
It showed what I feel like we've thought of the Cardinals all year, which is they're good at a little bit of everything. I don't know if they're elite at one thing. Their defense is elite, I would say, but it kind of went through, I don't know if I'd say a cold spell, but it just wasn't making the same plays that we saw last night. So you've got the defense that's making the elite plays. You've got the offense suddenly slugging again, and they're coming back in these games. The bullpen's fantastic again. By the way, Phil Maton, maybe the best free agent signing of the offseason. I mean, they got that guy for $2 million, and everybody knows what he's throwing, and they can't hit it. And he throws under 90 miles an hour for the most part. Like, it's insane what he's doing. Now, yeah, my cheeks got a little tight when Helsley entered the game, but he took care of business.
We all felt that way. I mean, let's be honest. We all felt
it's a common occurrence.
That's what you wanted to see, and we were all terrified when it happened.
Yeah, but outside of that, like I think you described it well for what the Cardinals have done for the Cubs right now, against the Cubs right now, which is they might be starting to turn the narrative of the NL Central. I don't think they're there yet, but I know they're starting to catch attention when I see Mark DeRosa's doing a 3.5-minute talk about the Cardinals today on MLB Central, who I can guarantee you they probably did not write in pen, hey, we're going to be talking about the Cardinals come this time, if it wasn't about them just selling.
All right, so I want to play you something. This is from Ollie Marmol. It's yesterday. He was on with KMOX. He does his weekly interview with them every Tuesday. This is a bit of a long answer, but he was asked about, how the Cardinals are able to maintain kind of this even keel despite a season that's been anything but. There have been times where the Cardinals feel like they're never going to win a game again, and then there are other times where it feels as though the Cardinals will never lose a game again. So he talked about that feeling that they have inside of the clubhouse, and he did project a little bit onto, I would assume, the three of us here in this room. Take a listen.
I think, one, we got to stop riding the emotional roller coaster of we need to sell tomorrow, now we're buyers. Now it's just, here's what I'll tell you about this group. And I give a lot of credit to our staff for this. I'll remove myself from this and talk a little bit about the pitching staff and then the offensive side with Brant Brown and that group. They do a really nice job every day of hitting the reset button. And that's even today. Hit 4 homers yesterday, feel good about it. You come in feeling great about last night's game. And 100% of the focus is going to be on what do we need to do today to win. Okay. And if it goes poorly, let's say we lose last night in a tough 9th inning, it just doesn't go our way and we blow it. 100% of the focus today is going to be on what do we need to do today to win. And I love that mentality because we don't ride the highs and lows of the season. We're truly focused on what's at hand today. And then we hit the reset button. We start all over again tomorrow. We have a young group that's not getting caught up in the emotional roller coaster of, man, we've lost 4 in a row. We've won 9 in a row. They're truly just hungry to play, man. They're hungry and they want to get after it. And every day it's its own day. That's different than the last couple of years, if I'm being very honest.
I agree with him. It is very different than what it's felt like over the last couple of seasons. And I think a lot of that is tied into Nolan Arenado. Give a listen. This is him after yesterday's win.
I think when you win ball games, you realize how important it is to play both sides of the ball. And I think these young guys are starting to learn that because we're winning games. We haven't won games like this in 2 years, really, at this point. So I think guys are learning that, okay, I can still contribute somehow to help this team win ball games.
Can we listen to that again? I got tied up with the music in the background. It was a great song.
They were vibing.
He said, I think the young guys are learning what you have to do in order to just contribute towards winning. Can I be honest? I think he's learning.
Yeah.
I think Nolan Arenado is learning what he can do at this stage of his career to impact winning for the St. Louis Cardinals, because that is not a 30 home run, 100 ribby guy. He's not that player anymore. He can still help them win. And Alex, one of your biggest takeaways from last night was what Nolan Arenado did to help them win that specific game.
Yeah, it was the guy that we spent all offseason talking about. You've got to find a way to trade Nolan Arenado because he's a salary casualty. He's not what he was before in terms of a middle of the order bat, and we thought that's the role he was going to play. And it kind of felt watching that game last night and really over the last 2 weeks, because he's come up with big moments with the bat in the last couple of weeks, but last night specifically, the guy that it felt so many people wanted out of St. Louis to put Nolan Gorman at third base, he might be the one that's saving your season right now, because in the middle of a cold spell, he's the one that the bat has come through. In his last 15 games, he's got 3 home runs, he's got 1 double, 7 RBIs, and he's got not the greatest, but an 873 OPS, but he's still hitting the ball.
Dude, I'll take that. From Nolan Arenado in the month of June, he's got an 800 OPS and he's batting 300.
Yeah.
Take that.
And he's got gold glove defense that you're not getting. That play last night is not made by Nolan Gorman at third base. You're talking about extra innings once again, maybe losing that baseball game. So to me, one of my biggest takeaways from the game is the guy that so many people wanted out of St. Louis might become the reason that they become a playoff team because of how he plays at the position that is still very important for the Cardinals.
Got a couple of texts I want to get to. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, do you worry about how many comeback wins they've had because it just doesn't seem like that's sustainable? Sure, I don't want to feel like that right now, though. From the 314. Guys, last week you were out and you were never allowed to jump back on. no front runners allowed. No, this year is about front running.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's what this season is all about. If you are a casual Cardinals fan or even a hardcore Cardinals fan and you've gone in and out with the season, man, that's more than understandable. This team has been hard to get your arms around.
Yeah. There was no roller coaster the last few seasons. That roller coaster went off the tracks 2 weeks in and never got back on.
You never felt like they pulled you back in. This season it was, all right, well, this is what it is. It's not going to go well for them. Because you started out, like, let's think about what this was. The second week of the year, you had that trip to Boston, and then you lose 2 out of 3 against Pittsburgh. Like, all right, well, guess this thing's just not going to go their way. Get excited about selling. And then you start 10-15, and it felt just like it had over the last couple of seasons. Then they got things back on track, and they did that massive winning streak. And I was like, okay, maybe they can do something. And then they lose 2 out of 3 against Detroit, and then they have that series against the Rangers, and then they lose 2 out of 3 against the Royals. Okay, well, this thing's done. And then they beat the Dodgers 2 out of 3. Well, nope, now we're swept against the Toronto Blue Jays. It's been up and down and up and down and up and down. And right now we're on that part of the roller coaster where it's like, whee, this is great. Everybody's having a good time. Yep. And man, they might end up losing 2 out of 3 against Cleveland and then 2 out of 3 against Pittsburgh. Ow. And we'll once again be going into that Cubs series, 4th of July weekend, saying, hot damn, got to win 2 out of 3 here. You're going to be a seller at the deadline. I don't know where this thing is going, and it's time for me to acknowledge as much. I felt as though I was seen by Ollie Marmol in that answer. Mm-hmm. Yes, I have been riding the roller coaster. I'm glad the Cardinals are not internally, but externally, I have every right to do so.
Oh, yeah.
If you're doing it with me, God bless you, because it's tough, man.
This is where I'm going to sound like BK here and give you the speech on how we should all have fun, guys. If you're not riding a roller coaster with the season, I don't know how enjoyable the season is. Like, yeah, if the roller coaster of a season is just always on the ups where it's like, man, this is fun. The season's boring because you want to get to the postseason and see what you can do, i.e. the Dodgers. The regular season doesn't matter. I want to see what you do in the postseason. Or it could be like what the last 3 years were, where that roller coaster went off the track and you were probably laying on the ground with 3 parts of your limbs across from you.
Yeah.
There's no fun in that. Now this roller coaster is like, are you good? Are you bad? Are you good? Are you bad? Trade deadline. You going to make a move? Are you going to stay? Are you going to trade away? That's what this season is. And frankly, it's the entertainment I think St. Louis Cardinals fans have needed.
Thrill Fan 22 on the text line.
He's gotta be
fellas,
fun.
That's the one complaint that I have about the show. Always very up or very down. Yeah, that's because your teams over the last calendar year and really even beyond that have been very up or very down. There has been very little of the, oh, we're just a steady 90-win pace all year long.
And let's be honest, if we did that, what a boring 3 hours it would be.
What a boring show we are.
This has been a really fun season to follow. I don't know where it's going from here, but I'm enjoying the hell out of this ride. And it reminds me a lot of last year's Blues season. It reminds me a lot of 2 years ago, the Mizzou football season, last year's Illinois season for T-Bone, where like Mizzou 2 years ago, basketball-wise as well. The most fun that you could possibly have as a fan is when you have no expectations and your team suddenly emerges as something more than that. When that happens, dude, it's all found money. And that's for the front office, it's for the fans, it's for everybody. It will never feel better than it does in that moment. Because once the expectations start, we're going to feel this year for the Blues. Once the expectations start, it changes the way that you experience all of this stuff. The winning starts to be less enjoyable, and the losing starts to hurt that much more. So enjoy the hell out of this season, man. This should be as much fun as you've had it as a Cardinals fan, I would assume, in a really, really long time because of the way that we came into the season with low expectations. That is not normal for the St. Louis Cardinals, and it should not be considered their normal moving forward.
So you thinking we trade Helsley after the break?
Yep. Probably. Coming up next, let's talk about PCA. Did you guys enjoy that last night?
Yeah, I'm down with it. Oh.
He is going to become, if not already become, the easiest player for Cardinals fans to root against. And we'll talk about his night from last night. It was a rough one, coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about Classic Air Care, your older HVAC system, or maybe your brand new HVAC system. It needs the proper care. It needs the maintenance that is going to help it maintain the length that you are going to be living in your home. And that's where Classic Air Care comes into play. Whether it's something as simple as cleaning out your filter, which some people don't even realize you need to do on a monthly basis to make sure that that unit stays in prime condition. I love Classic Air Care because you can sign up for a filter payment plan to where they send you out one every month to remind you, hey, now's the time to change your filter. Or maybe it's just something as simple as having a technician come out in the fall and the springtime to check the unit, clean the unit, make sure it's good to go, and it gets you through the hot summer or the cold winter. Check out Classic Air Care. They've got financing options for you if you need them for purchasing a new HVAC system. They've got that maintenance agreement. They do duct cleaning, or, like I said, something as simple as signing up for their filter program. Check out online, schedule online. Just do me a favor and tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. I've been using them since 2016. My family's been using them for the last 30 plus years. It's Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
Fly ball will hit center. Throw Armstrong back to the wall. He's got just enough room. Mason Wynn rounding third. PCA forgot how many outs there were. The run of the play late.
I'm honestly not sure what was worse, Alex. I think that, but I'm not totally positive. Was it that or the sack bunt with runners on the corners and one out and him at the plate? I don't know. It was one of those two.
It's that one.
The audio courtesy right there of FanDuel Sports Midwest.
The sack bunt's bad. Like, come on. You should be able to lay down a bunt. There's art to that, though. There's no art to throwing the ball to the cutoff man after you catch it at the wall. You get the ball, you turn around, you throw it to the cutoff man. You don't flaunt. He didn't even make a diving catch or like a wall snatcher. He stood at the wall and was like, cool, I got it. Oh, yeah, I got. Oh, uh-oh.
Try to be a little too cool for school.
Yeah, and he stands there and he's like, I made a bad play. God, pisses me off.
Yeah, he's going to be a guy the Cardinals fans enjoy rooting against. And he makes it very easy to root against him because of plays like that. He's one of those guys that doesn't think his own, what stinks. And you can feel that based on the way that he plays. And honestly, if he's on your team, that's part of why you enjoy watching him. But when you're on the opposite side of things, boy, do you root for stuff like that to go wrong for PCA. And you root for that bunt attempt to just completely blow up in his face, which is exactly what happened last night for the Cubs. Let's go ahead and take a listen to his post-game interview when he was asked about his bad night at the park.
Can you just walk us through the fourth inning? Is it as simple as just not knowing how many outs there were?
Simple as that.
And then in the seventh, what went into the decision to bunt?
That was an attempt for a little push bunt, trying to bunt for a base hit, but I didn't do a good job of playing the game of baseball today. So,
does there need to be any communication with Tucker there, or is that just something?
No, we give the outs every out, and I gave 2 outs, so can't really do much about that.
First off, before we bash on him, good on him to answer.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there are plenty of guys in sports that would say, I'm not talking to the media. I'm going to hide in the locker room and not answer. I always appreciate about that. But he's just got a voice that's just like, oh, God. Like, you know how I was with Zach Wilson when he was drafted by the Jets, and I'm like,
Yes.
I hope he fails just because of the look of him.
That's what the criticism of Sam Darnold was bad face. So he can't be a franchise quarterback because he doesn't have a good face.
Look, I don't like this about myself.
I think it's stupid. But
I don't like this about myself. I judge books by their cover. And yeah, when he made that play, I was kind of like, oh, cool. I felt good.
Yeah, because you're rooting against him.
Yeah.
And this is part of the rivalry, right? Like, there are guys
You
that
need
on
this.
the Cardinal side of things, Cubs fans hate. I don't know specifically who on this team that is. I would imagine Brendan Donovan is
Oh,
pretty
it's
annoying.
Mason Wynn, too.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. Mason Wynn, who throws like 100-something miles an hour from shortstop. Yeah, he's got to be.
He's got some swagger, and you can see it.
We need
Do
to
they
ask
hate
our.
Wilson Contreras, do you think?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Anytime.
He signed with the
He
Cardinals.
said that the Cardinals are the better organization this
When they play the
offseason.
Cubs next week, we need to get our boy Cappy on to see who the Cubs fans hate.
I think that's a good idea because we know who the Cardinals fans hate right now. I just threw my pin at you. I was trying to do my best impersonation of PCA from last night.
You act like I'm PCA.
When he
here.
just threw the bat into the Cardinals dugout. That was great. Speaking of Cap, he was on the radio this morning, and I took a listen because I wanted to hear how they're reacting to the last couple of games. Let's go ahead and see how he felt about last night's performance by the Cubs.
What Council's fascination with Dansby Swanson is, I have no idea. 2 days ago, he's in the cleanup hole. Last night, he's in the 5 hole. He's not hitting well, Craig. Do you want me to call your room and remind you of that? He should be hitting 7 or 8 right now, not 4 or 5. And guess what? He grounds out to end the game. Hell of a play by Arenado. He's also one of the 3 or 4 best third basemen defensively in the history of the sport. And he guns out Swanson. Ball game over. I mean, just that. There's a run if you steal second there, and I would be willing to take the chance. There's a run if you don't go brain dead on a fly ball at center field, and there's a run if you don't bunt. There's 3 runs right there. 3. Pissed off.
So hey, Craig, you can't hit. Do you need me to call the clubhouse to remind you?
Yeah, I don't really understand why Dansby Swanson is hitting where he is in the Cubs order. I don't care. I think it's great for the Cardinals that he is hitting there.
I'll tell you why. How much money is he making?
20-some-odd million.
That's why he's hitting there.
Yeah, you're not wrong. He is basically their version of Nolan Arenado in a lot of different ways, but Arenado has been better this season. Low bar to clear. He's been slightly better, and he's also just overall like a better defender as well, as you saw there at the end of the game. I am really curious to see what happens with the Cubs if this continues. If the Cardinals win one of the next 2, forget sweeping, win one of the next 2 games and win 3 out of 4 in this series, the Cubs will then have lost, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their last 7 games? And they're going into a stretch where you're about to play Houston on the road, then Cleveland, then the Cardinals once again, and then they finish out the first half of the season against the New York Yankees on the road. Oh boy, those sphincters are going to start tightening up there in Chicago very quickly if that's the way that this thing goes.
And it should. Like, this is kind of a crucial season for the Cubs because the Kyle Tucker thing is an unknown. Your team you've got really good pieces, but you don't know what these pieces look like without a middle of the order impact bat like Kyle Tucker. Does Pete Crow Armstrong just have this one really good year and then kind of fall back down to earth? You might need to be capitalizing on this. And now, like, the sphincter should already be tight if you're Chicago, because now the Cubs and the Brewers are all within 3 games of you, or the Cards and the Brewers are all within 3 games of you. And frankly, they're kind of showing that they're playing better than you when they've matched up against you. So, yeah, I would say things start to get a little bit panic mode if you're the Cubs right now, especially if you lose this series, because by the trade deadline, I don't think they're going to be selling. I think they're going to be buying no matter what. But, man, if you drop out of first place, things change in terms of dynamic.
No doubt. And they're the team that they're as all in as any team in the Central is this year.
Yeah.
And Tucker, like, it sure doesn't seem as though he's going to be re-signing with the Cubs. Now, maybe he does in the offseason, but right now it doesn't seem like an extension is imminent by any stretch. And if that's the case, dude, you have got to capitalize on this season, because there's no guarantee you have Kyle Tucker at any point beyond the 2025 season. That guy makes that offense work. The offense is good, but the offense is really based upon having that dude in the middle of your order. It's what we've talked about with the Cardinals. If you place that guy in the middle of the Cardinals order, everything looks so much different. This offense suddenly becomes borderline, if not actually elite. And now you look the part of a legitimate contender Well, if that's pulled out of their lineup starting next year for the Cubs, everything changes for them. Their pitching is fine. It's not great. I think we've seen that in this series. Jameson Taillon has his issues. I mentioned yesterday going into the game. He's got home run issues. You see the home run issues? They just sent down another guy that was part of their rotation that started against the Cardinals in game 1 of this series. They've got some question marks, and they're going to have to solidify that. And so they have to mortgage some of their future to Band-Aid things together this year at the deadline when it is very much a seller's market and not a buyer's market. As of today, it doesn't seem as though there's going to be a whole lot of options out there to significantly upgrade your team. I am fascinated to see what the next few weeks look like for the Chicago Cubs.
I am as well, because when you think about how front offices view this, they're going to be looking more 3 to 5 years. And I think when they're doing that, they're just under the impression of, well, yeah, maybe we do re-sign Kyle Tucker. And you're right. Like, he's the guy that makes that offense run. And the thing about him is I think this is the trap they will fall into if they don't re-sign him in the offseason is, oh, we've got Kyrou Armstrong. And that's a nice piece. Don't get me wrong. But there's nothing in Kyle Tucker's profile that you look at, A, because of the track record, but B, just look at his batter profile and you go, there's nothing here that says, oh, this is like a fluky thing. He can't sustain this for the next 5 to 7 years. You look at Kyrou Armstrong, he chases a lot, right? It kind of gives off the Javi Baez kind of theme of, boy, when he does hit it, it goes far. He also swings a ton and chases a ton out of the zone to where I wouldn't want to bank on that as being the guy that replaces Kyle Tucker, and that's why, to your point, they need to push their chips in. I don't think they're going to be willing to do it, though, because they're going to be thinking the long term rather than the short term.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. By the way, the Cardinals, did you know they're only like 3.5 back of the Phillies right now? And if you look at the offense has actually been better than what the Phillies have done so far this year. They've scored more runs. They've hit like the same number of home runs, which is really
it's
strange.
Not sustainable. We don't believe in it.
You look at the Padres, the Cardinals have the same record as the Padres right now. They're actually a half game up on them currently in the wild card standings. You look around this National League, even the Mets, who I think are really, really good. They've gone through a really dry spell right now. They're 1-9 in their last 10 games. They've been struggling. The Cardinals are 2 games back of the New York Mets. For all the talk that we had, and I was leading the charge on this 2 weeks ago, well, the Giants just added Rafael Devers. You look at the Phillies, the Mets, the Padres, like, where's the spot for the Cardinals? Cardinals are pushing some of these teams out to the side and saying, hey, we belong in this conversation with all of the rest of you. We'll see if that continues. But right now, they're making a hell of a statement in the National League.
They're doing their job, right? We said that you needed to win the series against the White Sox and the Reds. Well, you did both of those. If you beat the Cubs in these 2 series, like, you're doing their job. What I'll be curious about is that window from post-All-Star break to the trade deadline, because like, some of these teams, I kind of wonder, are they just trying to get to the All-Star break? There's exhaustion sets in. Playoff teams know when to flip the switch. Do they flip the switch out of the All-Star break once you approach the trade deadline? That's going to be that window that if you've already pounced and then if you can continue pouncing, then yeah, the Cardinals are putting themselves in a prime position.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get to questions and answers here in about 15 minutes. The YouTube chat is always available at youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. By the way, I have not mentioned this yet. John Mozeliak will join us coming up at 1:30. He will do so on the YouTube viewing screen as well, so you can check it out over there. If you want to watch the interview with John Mozeliak, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL is the place to do so. We'll get into that at 1:30. Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, joins us next. Alex, these rumors just aren't going anywhere. We'll talk about them with Kerbs next here on 101 ESPN.
Craig, guys, I hope you've been listening over the course of the winter and into the spring. We've been saying make sure you get Classic Air Care out to the house and maintain that air conditioning unit. Why? Because of right now, 92 degrees, baking outside. You want to make sure that it's cool as hell inside, and that means that air conditioner is running efficiently and properly. So if you did it, hopefully you've got a nice, cool, perfect home for you to get you through this heat wave, courtesy of Classic Air Care. Now, if you haven't done it, you can still get that unit maintained by booking an appointment online at classicaircare.com. Or listen, if something goes wrong, you're like, man, it's just not blowing as cold as I want it to be right now. It's just not where I want it to be. All the folks at Classic Air Care, have them come out and have them check that unit out. Let them make sure that everything from the way it should be blowing to the temperature points and everything is right in line with where it needs to be. They're experts for a reason. They're technicians. Some of them have over 40 years of experience working on every different kind of unit, and it doesn't matter the age as well. And if you determine that you really need a unit, a new one, well, guess what? They can give you a free quote online, or they can come out and give you a quote as well. They will take great care of you. They take great care of me and my family. That's why my house is perfectly set at 71 degrees in the winter and in the summer. It's Classic Air Care. Use them. I do. You can log online at classicaircare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Cubs 8-7 last night as they've taken the first two games of the four-game set. Game 3 will be tonight, 6:45 will be first pitch. Matthew Boyd will be on the mound for Chicago. Eric Fetty will get the start for St. Louis. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. SEMALondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Oh, it is a fun week in the NHL. 1 week away from the start of free agency, and the St. Louis Blues are making some news as well yesterday, announcing their next iteration of what their logo will be, rebranding everything. And Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, joins us now via the Callier and Thompson hotline to talk it all over in that final week prior to the start of free agency. Kerbs, appreciate the time as always, man. I know you were amped up yesterday when you saw the rebrand for the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. Done a lot of media stuff over the last 2 days with it. Talked to a lot of fans, and we'll hear from some season ticket holders on Friday night when we have our draft season ticket holder event. But, man, I love what they did. I think, every now and then just a tweak, a refreshing. The introduction, guys, of those three new kind of tertiary logos, right? The floor with the treble clef look there, the STL, which I absolutely love, and then the trumpet to me, the river trumpet. I think now there's different ways to rep the note. I'm excited to get some gear myself, actually, and I love the coloring. I love the reasoning, and look, this is still important. They have definitely continued to do something the Blues have always done. They haven't forgotten the past. They haven't just created something totally out of whack. Even the new marks have a classic look to them, and to me, that's what I absolutely love.
Best jersey in the league now, Kerbs, right?
Oh, we've always had that, haven't we?
Yeah. BK doesn't think so.
There's a few years that maybe the red ones that we can.
No, those were great.
I will tell you this.
I think their old jerseys that they wore last year as their primaries, Kerbs, were good. They were fine. I think these are elite.
You think these what?
These are elite. These are the best in the league.
Gotcha. I love it. I think it's great. Listen, here's the cool thing about the Blue Note, right? And truthfully, it's like the winged wheel with Detroit. It is like the Blackhawks logo, the Maple Leafs. maybe the NY with the New York Yankees and how that's, related to them. And just like the birds on the bat, you see it, you know exactly what it is. You see it, you know exactly what it's about. And it's taken over 50 years, but it is really one of the true iconic logos at Blue Note in all of sports.
All right, Curbs, let's get into this. So I don't want to ask you about the specific reporting, but I do want to ask you roster-wise what your thoughts are on some of the stuff that's out there right now that's percolating, okay? So with Frank Saravalli on his trade board, he has Jordan Kyrou on the list right now. And the reasoning, the rationale, that this is the stuff that I find to be interesting to kick around with you here. He said Kyrou joins the board as a player just days away from his full no-trade clause kicking in on July 1st. He's been a very productive player, averaging 35 goals per season over the last 3 years. So why would the Blues move him? It's a big commitment that's remaining. Plus, the calculus that rival teams have made is that Doug Armstrong will see rookie Jimmy Snuggerud as a player who can effectively replace Jordan Kyrou. The Blues are a middling team that isn't young, and this may be one way to continue to turn over the roster. Now, I would push back on that last line there, but let's set that aside for a second. The idea of trading Kyrou, the only reason you even have these conversations right now, Curbs, is because of that July 1st date where the full no-trade clause kicks in, and the Blues at that point lose all of their potential leverage in negotiating any kind of a deal. Is there a way for the Blues to get better, in your mind, by trading Jordan Kyrou prior to that date?
Yes, there is. Now, it is all predicated, and I realize that this is going to sound cliche, but that's all predicated on what are they getting back, right? Or what would they be using that cap space for, right? I do believe there is a way to get better in that. Look, this to me it's an interesting one because you're looking at a player that has posted 3 consecutive 30-goal seasons. If it wasn't for a slow start in 23-24, you're looking at a player that would have posted 4 straight 70-plus point seasons. We haven't seen that very much in the St. Louis Blues in the last 25 years since Hall, Shanahan, and that group. You've had a couple players that have done something like Tarasenko's hitting 70 points. O'Reilly did a few years in a row, right? But there hasn't been a lot of consistency there. So if you're talking about moving a player like Jordan Kyrou, you got to be real careful because that's not something that the Blues have been really good at developing. At the same time, guys, I'm not sure it's all about the points. I really do think you have enough players, and if you continue to get better defensively under Jim Montgomery, where your goal differential changes just defensively by making more plays and getting more saves, I think you can get something. But the question to me is, who's going to win you the puck in the playoffs? And then that's what the St. Louis Blues have to determine, not just with Jordan Kyrou. That's why this playoff series was so important, and it's really a bummer why Dylan Holloway wasn't available. What do you see from players now that have had not just one, but there's been a couple of playoff opportunities now for guys like Kyrou and obviously Thomas and stuff like that. So to me, are you building the team not for the regular season, but are you building the team for the playoffs? And here's where I go on this. And this is why you won't hear me say no on just about anything. The Florida I get it. It was Matthew Tkachuk. It was a unique situation, and it was a unique elite player. So I understand that. The Florida Panthers traded a player that had just had 115 points and a top 4 defenseman to get him. And it changed the course of a franchise. I believe the Blues are moving into that window where they can continue. I believe the Blues are at a point where if there's an O'Reilly type deal where you're getting one of the elite players on the market, right? That won you a championship. Well, the Blues have a younger team. Maybe they win a championship in the earlier part of the window rather than the middle to later part of the window. And I think that if there is a move to improve your team, you have depth on wing. You have some young depth on wing. You have more depth coming in some first-round picks that you like. To me, depending on that package, I think you have to listen at how you can make your team potentially better.
Is it necessary, Curbs, if Kyrou is the piece that you're looking to improve your roster with, is it necessary for the team to seek out a centerman, or can they improve by upgrading their defense if Kyrou is that trade chip?
Guys, I guess you have to answer that, Alex, by saying both, right? But the difference is does that all have to be done in a single trade? Well, not necessarily. I mean, you can make a trade, you can free up cap space, and then you can find, a centerman. You're not looking for a number one centerman. You have that in Robert Thomas, right? Okay, and listen, the other thing that I really do, guys, is I go back and I look at the history of Doug Armstrong, okay? And I look at it, and honestly, guys, since he's been here, you actually look at the St. Louis Blues in the last 20 years. I think the top 3 free agent signings you could say the Blues have had in the last 20 years, off the top of my head here, I'd say Paul Kyrou, I'd say Stastny, right? And Tyler Bozak, right? Well, look at the role Tyler Bozak played for 4 years for the St. Louis Blues there. And the Blues are not looking for someone for the next 7 years. Like, look, if you get it, that's great. And as Dvorsky develops, maybe you're deeper than you never thought you'd be. But you're kind of thinking right now that you're hoping that you just need someone to bridge the gap until Dvorsky's there, right? You are better if Braden Shen is your third-line center, but he proved last year again, 50 points. He can be your second-line center for you. Yeah, I think there's ways to accomplish it. The other thing, guys, is Doug Armstrong has just never been a stand-pat guy when you haven't accomplished where he wants to accomplish. So I expect some changes. Now, are they major ones? I don't know. But I expect a tweak here or there. And to me, that also has to happen defensively. They've got flexibility now with trade clauses changing on defense, and the Blues can now maybe do some things with more flexibility than they've had in the last few years.
A follow-up on this, and this is my final question for Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues. He's joining us as he does each week here on BK and Ferrario. Kerb's one of the players that has been most discussed as a possible return for Kyrou, and this is just what's available publicly, right? We have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, but I did want to ask your thoughts on it. Noah Dobson, he's a 25-year-old defenseman for the New York Islanders. He's 6'4", he's 200 pounds. He's not the most overly physical player, but he has been a point producer, a consistent 50 to 70 point producer on the blue line, and great on the power play as a quarterback there. Is that a guy that you think would fit in with what the Blues are trying to build defensively right now?
Yes, absolutely. It fits. He checks pretty much all the boxes in terms of age, ability, where he's at, that kind of stuff. So, yes, that is a type of player that I think absolutely can help the Blues. Remember, and you guys were sitting in a meeting with us, when Doug Armstrong assessed his top 4 defensemen, right? When he assessed his top 4, he said, we clearly don't have the best top 4 in the league, but we are definitely above average. I got to look at those words and take them for what he's saying there, right? So to me, that tells you that if you're going to become a Stanley Cup contender, there's room to improve your top 4. Is Noah Dobson one of those type of players? He could be one of those type of players that grows with you. And keep this in mind, too. I mentioned those free agents, but when you look at the true impact players that the Blues have had over the last number of years when it comes to, putting them into competitive scenarios, things like that, dude, like you're talking, most of them are acquired by trade. Ryan O'Reilly, then you re-sign them. Jay Bouwmeester, then you re-sign them. And then I look at trades like that. So to me, it's the trade market that I look for more impacting the team based on Doug Armstrong's MO than I look at the free agent market.
He's Chris Kerber. He's the voice of the Blues. He joins us each week here on BK and Ferrario, and we always appreciate his time. Kerb's going to be an interesting next week or so. We'll be able to recap some of the big moves that happened when we are talking with you next Wednesday. Look forward to breaking it all down with you. Thanks for doing so today.
It will be fun, guys. Enjoy the next couple days, and Alex, we'll talk to you Friday night.
That's right. We got our NHL draft show Friday night. Kerbs and I starting at 6 o'clock all the way up until the Blues selection at 19
and
overall.
That'll be on the radio, 101 ESPN?
It'll be on the radio, and I believe we're going to be up on YouTube with that as well. We'll be broadcasting from Enterprise Center because it's a decentralized draft this year.
Let's get it on the radio first, and then we'll also
You
get
know
it
what?
on YouTube.
I'm confident that we will have both for everybody, Kerbs.
I wish you guys would have the very best.
I believe in track record, Alex, so we'll see how this goes.
Okay, you know
Appreciate
what?
you,
Touche,
Kerbs.
Kerbs.
Take it easy, man. It's Chris Kerber,
Cheers, guys.
voice of the Blues, joining us here on BK and Ferrario.
By the way, we have a brand new episode of Last Minute Blues podcast that just dropped, previewing the NHL draft on Friday.
Found at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL, and over there tomorrow, T-Bone and I will be talking with Cardinals assistant general manager Rob Serfolio. He's going to be joining us in studio. Really excited for this. It'll be our first time having somebody in studio with us. Alex, I know you guys have done this a number of times. Alexander Steen stepped by in studio with you. You guys had the announcement for the Blues' new logos and everything. So we will be able to do the same thing tomorrow with Rob Serfolio on our show.
Little brother always tries to be like big brother, don't they?
That's right. That's why we get the studio every week. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on BK and Ferrario. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. I will tell you, our next segment is going to be about the Jordan Kyrou stuff. So we'll try to avoid too much of that in questions and answers. I promise you, I understand there are a lot of you that have questions about it. We'll try to answer a bunch of those in our next segment, but we'll use this to talk about some of the other stuff. All right, from the 618. Does Ollie stay with the hot lineup tonight, or do you think he plays more of his right-handed hitters against the lefty? I find this to be a really fascinating
I think if you're Ollie, you go with the hot hitters right now, regardless of the splits. You go with the guys that are seeing the ball well. That's your best path to success.
I think I agree. I think you run out basically the same lineup yesterday because Burley's not splitty right now, Gorman's not splitty right now, Newport's not splitty right now. I would just run out yesterday's lineup.
I think there's one change that they probably make. I think Victor Scott does not start, and I think you see Hampson start for the Cardinals tonight. The guy they just claimed off of waivers. He's a right-handed hitter. He plays decent defense. He is fast as well. I think that's one of the swaps that you see. I will be curious about Sajasi. Does he potentially get into the lineup tonight? And if so, who comes out of the lineup for him?
It'd be Gorman, wouldn't it?
Possibly. You could see Gorman come out. You could see Noot come out. I don't know that I would do that right now.
You can't do Noot. He's feeling it. Noot and Burleson, to me, you cannot touch on this roster.
Sure.
Like they're and this is coming from somebody that I said a week ago that maybe Nootbaar's fallen out of the core conversation. I mean, if he's feeling it, you got to see the lineup because you're seeing the ball well.
Yeah. If it's Gorman, the way that you do that, I mean, the guy hit a homer. But the way you do it is Gorman comes out, Donovan goes to the outfield, Burleson goes to DH.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the spot that I find the most interesting. It could also be a situation where they put Noot in center today. I know they don't love doing that, but Ollie mentioned it specifically yesterday that they're going to see more of Noot in center here pretty soon. So I wonder if you see that tonight as well, where Noot goes to center. Hampson just comes off of the bench. He's their 26th man right now. I actually, by the way, liked that move yesterday. I thought it was smart. Scott comes out. Donovan goes to the outfield, so JC goes to second. I think that's probably the most optimal lineup. I just don't know if they're willing to give up that much defense in center.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they moved Nootbaar to center field. Like, I wonder if Ollie said that before the Hampson move, and, like, he didn't know if they're getting Hampson or not, because, like, they've not been willing to do that at all, really. But I could see where they go that route as well.
They had already made that move when he said that.
Did they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe they go that. Otherwise, like, then I don't understand what Hampson's true role is outside of look good as the 26th man.
He's better than Barrero. That's it. I think it's that simple. I think this is a guy that is better than Barrero in the role that Barrero was playing for us, where he'll be in the lineup once every 10 days. And he can play anywhere. He plays second. He can play third. He can play in the outfield if you need him to. He's got some speed. If you need a pinch runner late in a game, he could be a guy that does that for you, especially like you pinch hit Pozo and then you need somebody to come in to run for Pozo potentially. He's a guy that could do that for you. So I think his role is very limited, but at least there is a role for him. Whereas Barrero, there really wasn't. All right, from the 314, guys, MLB.com is featuring Skeens versus Mizorowski tonight as the top matchup in baseball. Is there a Cardinals player, current or future, that you believe could get that kind of attention anytime soon? I think it would have to be a pitcher, and I don't think that the answer is yes. I think no. I don't think they have a guy like that.
Yeah, because you're talking, if you're going position player, you're talking like Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani-esque, and you really don't have one of those, so
Correct.
No.
Yeah, I don't think they've got a guy like that. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see one in the near future for the Cardinals.
Mizorowski's given up, one hit in his last 3 starts?
He's been unbelievable. I saw somebody say the closest comparison for Mizorowski is actually Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher.
Mizorowski should pick up a bat and start trying to swing then, because you're halfway there.
From the 314, guys, do you think the Blues will announce a signing of Radek Faksa before the draft? You said you heard some
JR and I
on him signing elsewhere.
Yeah, JR and I were talking about this on the podcast that, at least, and this is just a rumor right now, but JR has heard that, at least Fox's side might be interested in seeing what's out there. And again, JR explains himself a little bit more on the podcast, but reading between the lines when Doug Armstrong spoke back on Monday, it sure sounded like they've had conversations, but there's nothing that's closer into the work. And I personally believe the closer you get to free agency, the less likely it is that player comes back to the team.
Couple more quick hitters here. Does the Evander Kane deal make you feel confident that Army can shed contracts without attaching an asset? Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was one of the big takeaways that we all had in the room together whenever we saw that Evander Kane trade to the Vancouver Canucks. Guy like Justin Falk, Nick Leddy, I think on their current deals are actually assets for the Blues.
I think you could get better for those guys than what Evander Kane got, because Evander Kane's a problem.
Yeah, 1 year, $4 million for a solid third pair defenseman. I think there will be a real market for that. Yeah. Not like a huge asset, but could you get a third or fourth round pick? Yeah, I think you could.
Yeah, I think you could. I think you could get a third round pick for Falk. I think you're getting less than that, less than a fourth round pick for any of the other options. But a team is willing to take them on by themselves, or if they're in a package, that might increase the return for the Blues.
All right, he's Alex Estebo, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In 15 minutes, we'll talk about, or we'll play a game, rather, of more likely to happen. You guys give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. But coming up next, Jordan Kyrou's rumors are starting to swirl once again. What would a return that actually gets you excited look like for the St. Louis Blues? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
it's a decision time for the St. Louis Blues. They have a few days, less than a week until Kyrou's no trade clause kicks in. They lose significant leverage, obviously. And with that, you see the play of Jimmy Snuggerud, a super talented player that can come in on the wing, and maybe him plus someone else can give you more production than what you've gotten from Kyrou, which, by the way, has been really consistent. It's a moment in time where you must make a decision with that no trade clause kicking in. Are we trying to do something a little bit different? Are we trying to change the mix of this team? What's the upward trajectory of this team? Moving Kyrou at this moment might be one way to do that.
That was Frank Saravalli on the Daily Face-Off live show just a little bit ago, alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Jordan Kyrou's name, we knew this was coming, Alex. The week before that no trade clause kicks in, it was always likely that we would hear some kind of trade rumors surrounding his name. I have no idea if Jordan Kyrou is going to get traded within the next week. No clue. Do I think it's a possibility? Sure. He's 27 years old. He's on a more than reasonable $8 million contract for somebody that scores 35 goals seemingly every year. He's going to produce 70 points for you. He is a player that if you're another team, it is easy to talk yourself into trading significant assets for Kyrou. What's harder is for the Blues to look at a deal like this and say, yeah, we are clearly getting better by making this move right now. So there's a few different aspects to a decision like this. One, you have to first decide, can we win a cup with Jordan Kyrou? If you say no to that question, that is the starting point to get yourself into these conversations. If you say yes, then it becomes a little more interesting where you say, okay, are we winning a cup because of Kyrou? And could we otherwise have a player on our roster by trading him that we believe can be the driving force behind us winning a Stanley Cup? I think what Saravalli said is right. You can reshape your team like this. You can go out there and acquire a player that makes your team harder to play against in the postseason. I think it's hard to make your team better in the regular season with a trade like this. I do for 2025, maybe beyond, but for 2025, I think it's hard to do that. For the playoffs, it's very possible because I don't know what Kyrou looks like in a Western Conference Finals against, the Vegas Golden Knights or the Dallas Stars. I have no idea what he looks like in those series. So I think this is real. I think there's at least a chance that Jordan Kyrou's traded between now and this time next week. Alex, as you've started to see these rumors swirl, let's start on the Kyrou angle before we talk about any kind of a return. Yeah. What's gone through your mind?
So we had this conversation yesterday, and we got the video clip out on social media at 101 ESPN. If you're trading Kyrou for another forward, you've got to get something back that's making your team better. And I just don't see what's out there that makes sense. It would make sense that the Blues are looking at Kyrou saying, does he fit what we're trying to build? They got their coach. They've got their young core. They've got the prospects coming. What is our identity? Because Jim Montgomery has an identity set in place, and he is here for the next 5 years. And I just don't know if Kyrou fits that identity. We had this conversation back once Holloway started to go through his hot streak. And I asked you, does Kyrou become expendable because of Dylan Holloway's emergence? Like, you can sit there and say Kyrou is a 3-time 30-goal scorer, and that's something Holloway cannot say. But it's hard to find somebody that would say Holloway cannot be a 30-goal scorer in the NHL. Teams project in the future with this stuff. And on top of Holloway, you saw Bolduc become a 20-goal scorer. You believe Jimmy Snuggerud is a 20-goal scorer. You've already got Pavel Buchnevich. Jake Neighbors has shown the ability to be a 25-goal scorer. Even Dom, who nobody likes, said it. This team is deep at the wing position. You know what teams do when they make trades, BK? They trade from their depth. And you can't trade a guy that's an unknown right now versus a guy that, yes, he is a known commodity of 30-plus goals in a season. But he is also somebody that the Blues, I would imagine, if this conversation is happening, is questioning if he fits the identity of what Jim Montgomery wants to build.
Also, if you want to improve elsewhere, this is the chip you have to play, man.
Yep.
This is it. And if you're going to move Kyrou, this is the time you have to do it. You have no other options. It's either now or Kyrou's going to be here for the long haul. That's the way you have to at least view it as the front office, because once he has that no trade clause, you lose all leverage, and now suddenly he gets to choose where he goes.
Yeah.
And instead of you being able to go out there and just canvass the entire league for the best possible return, you have to go to him and say, where do you want to go? And then they get to basically name their price for him, right? So this is a very complicated situation. I saw on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN from Adam claiming that you can't win a cup with Kyrou is a discrediting statement. What if the Blues make that statement? Because they might. If the Blues trade Jordan Kyrou in the next week, that is the statement they are making to you. Make no mistake about it. Yeah. Because otherwise, there's no reason to trade Jordan Kyrou right now because he's young, he's cost-controlled, he's locked up for the long term, and it is a more than comfortable cost for the St. Louis Blues to have. They might, though, decide, I don't know, they might decide, you know what? It makes more sense for us to trade Kyrou for a young, big, puck-moving defenseman that can be in our top 4 for the next 8 years, and then we can go back to the market and acquire a winger. Because, dude, you can find a bunch of wingers out there. Like, we've been talking about how difficult it is on this year's market to find centers and defensemen, and it is. It's incredibly difficult to find those guys. You can find a bunch of different wingers. Yeah. You want to go sign Nikolai Ehlers? Go for it. Yeah, Brock Besser. There. Brock Besser, go for it. He's out there. You want to go sign Brad Marchand? Go for it. He's out there. I don't think these are things necessarily that the St. Louis Blues would do, but you want to sign Mikael Granlund? And then you just want to make the decision in camp, hey, is Granlund a third-line center for us or a winger? We'll go with the best 9. Yeah. You could go do that as well. So
Evan Rodriguez's name just came up from the Florida Panthers. If he might be a cap casualty, well, there's a winger that's just won 2 Stanley Cups. So maybe you get Dobson and you replace some of Kyrou's production by going back to the market because you have money left over. They could do this and become a better team. It's possible. I think dismissing that notion is kind of crazy. Well, and this one from the well-endowed on our Air Comfort Service text line. Problem is every team in the league knows you're on a deadline and aren't going to give you full asking price.
Yes, they will.
You're not on a deadline. You don't have to trade Kyrou. Yes, it's a deadline. That means you got to trade him. They don't have to trade him. We're good with this 35-goal scorer on our second line. If you want him, you're going to make it worth it. And the reason Noah Dobson's name is coming up is because the Islanders know they can't afford Dobson or don't want to pay Dobson. So if you want to get rid of him, we can afford him. And this, frankly, makes our team better. Because, again, I asked the question, what's your identity? Jim Montgomery loves his defense and loves the ability to make plays on defense. Show me a better top 4 if you make the trade in the Western Conference of Dobson, Parayko, Fowler, and Broberg, and you're getting a core piece of your team. Now, I don't know how big this deal would get, if it even happens with the New York Islanders. Maybe you can find yourself another winger or a centerman in return of that trade, but you're always looking to improve your roster. And I think the reason Kyrou's name is coming up, and this is what Saravalli put in his piece, they have pieces that they believe can fill the winger spot. I asked the question yesterday, and bet it or forget it, can the Blues get 100 goals from those 4 wingers of Snuggerud, Bolduc, Neighbors, and who was the 4th? Oh, Holloway. If they can get that from those guys, why wouldn't you look at it? I understand you're losing that 30-goal scorer, but I was looking at this because we were talking during the commercial break. In the last 10 years, there have been 4 teams that won a Stanley Cup that did not have a 30-goal scorer on it. And you know what happened with their roster? They were big defensively, and they had pack mentality on offense from their forwards.
There's ways you can win this way.
Yeah.
There is. It's hard. It's not an easy thing to do, and everybody's got to be bought in. But if you can get the guys pulling in the right direction, this is the way the Blues did it in 2019. It would be returning to their previous version of their identity. Big defensemen with pack mentality up front and an elite goalie once you get to the playoffs.
And you're younger. And I just, for me, it's hard to believe that if, and again, we're doing the hypothetical projecting that Kyrou and Dobson are the big deal here. I don't believe that if Dobson is acquired, you're returning with Falk and Leddy still on this roster. So what comes in the return of those players?
Probably not much, but the return is money. The return is I now have $4 million to spend if it's Nick Leddy that leaves, or $6.5 million to spend if it's Justin Falk that's leaving. And so now suddenly that Nikolai Ehlers idea that I just mentioned, that's realistic.
And the return that comes back in those doesn't mean that stays with the team. That also can be flipped for more stuff.
Sure.
This is why it's all like we're talking transactions, and people hate that when we're talking hypotheticals. But we're doing this because this is how Doug Armstrong operates. Doug Armstrong doesn't operate in the straight line of we're making a trade for this player and that is what our roster looks like. If he's making this trade, there's 7 other legs that could be coming on the other side of this one. The only reason is this is the one that sets the market of what the idea they're looking for. So I've become a lot more willing to believe that Kyrou could be on the move before July 1st, because if you want to upgrade your team, which it's very evident they want to, this is the only piece that makes you infinitely better right now.
And they may decide, you know what, it's not worth it for us.
Yeah.
That I would say right now, my current betting favorite would be Kyrou's on the team this time.
I would agree.
But you've got to canvass the league, man. You're not doing your job if you don't. If we know anything about Doug Armstrong, it's that he is going to check out and see what's out there for any of his options before he gets stuck into a spot. And Jordan Kyrou is one of those guys that this time next week, you'll be quote-unquote stuck. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I've got a 35-goal scorer that's 27 years old, making $8 million a year.
Could be worse.
That's a good spot to be in.
We'll take it.
I bet you this time next week, a guy like, I don't know, Vancouver Canucks winger you just mentioned. Why am I blanking on his name right
Besser.
now? Besser is going to be making more than Jordan Kyrou. I think Jordan Kyrou is a better bet next season to score 35 goals than Brock Besser is. But that's the way the market is heading. So it's not a bad thing if Kyrou is still here. I just find all of this to be fascinating.
I do too.
And when Noah Dobson's name was the one that was thrown out there, I was like, dude, that sounds like Doug Armstrong to me.
Yeah.
Trading a player that is not physical, about to get locked into a no trade clause, and you're not totally sure if you want to build around him, and you could move that asset for a 25-year-old puck-moving defenseman that's 6'5" and can grow with Broberg to be that top pair defensively soon. Yeah, man, that's something that I would have to consider. Those guys are unicorns. Those guys don't exist in the market. And if they do, they're getting $12 million a year.
And essentially, you're setting up Dobson and Broberg to be your 1-2 punch moving forward with. Those are two guys that both can produce a lot of offense on top of playing great defense. We can end it with this. I agree with what Kerb said there at the end of our interview. After a season like the Blues just had, Doug Armstrong is not the type of president of hockey operations to just stand pat. And as much as I believe I don't think it's bad if this team returns with the same roster, I know that Doug Armstrong's wheels are moving. And it's not just sitting on your hands saying, not dealing into the free agent market and we'll see if a trade comes to us. It feels like this is where Doug starts to say, like, my final year, you need to make a move.
Dobson's camp is looking for $11 million. It's from the 618. He very well may be. And that's a lot of money to spend. But that's the market. Mm-hmm. If you want a legitimate top 4 defenseman and potentially even top pair defenseman at that age that has this kind of track record, you're paying $11 million or more. If he was an unrestricted free agent, I bet you that dude gets $12 million this offseason.
Yeah.
That's the market. And Doug Armstrong mentioned that in our conversation with him just the other day. He said, if we're trying to upgrade over Parayko, it's $12 million to do so. Mm-hmm. So get ready for sticker shock, everybody. That is coming down the pike this time next week.
And if that's too expensive for you, I mean, go wait and see what Evan Bouchard's going to get paid. And Evan Bouchard actually produced fewer points than what Dobson produced 2 years ago with the New York Islanders. Justin just sent the text in saying, well, then why did the Blues give Kyrou an 8-year contract extension? For this reason.
Yes.
To maximize the return. If he was an RFA or a UFA after this season, you're not getting the same amount.
From the Major Stronzo says, I'm glad that dip bleep fans and radio idiots aren't making the decisions for the Blues roster. I don't know what Kyrou needs to do to make people realize how good he is. This town doesn't deserve his talent. He led the team in goals and plus minus, scored more goals than Matthews, McKinnon, Crosby, Rantanen, etc. Sure, and I don't know how clearly I can say this. I am not somebody, and if you haven't listened to this radio show long enough, I'll go ahead and say this. I'm not somebody that is just willing to ship out Jordan Kyrou. I've been one of his biggest defenders for years on the radio. If you want to do so, there are reasons to do so. And if you're going to ship him out, it is for a return like Noah Dobson. This is a very unique opportunity for the St. Louis Blues. I don't think you just go willy-nilly trade him for whatever the best return is. You better get something of real significance for Kyrou. Otherwise, you're making a decision that is going to set your organization back. So this is not just us saying, I got to get him out of here. That guy is a total cancer in the locker room. It's the opposite of that. He's such an asset that so many teams are going to be wanting to get their hands on him that you could potentially get a massive return for him. So that's why we're talking about this right now. And frankly, because it's a realistic opportunity for them in the next week.
Also, don't believe Major Stronzo, because December of 2024, he said, trade bleeping Kyrou.
Okay, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Uncovered Service Text line. More likely to happen here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely here on BK and Ferrario. John Mozeliak, Cardinals president of operations, joins us 1 hour from now. You can watch that interview on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. All right, let's get into more likely to happen. Alex, more likely to be traded within the next 6 weeks. Just wanted to check the dates. Jordan Kyrou or Ryan Helsley?
You mean we're thinking kind of the same? Because I had a different player in spot of Helsley.
Were you thinking Gorman?
I was thinking Walker.
I was thinking Gorman, actually. So all three of us were. I'm going to say it's more likely. That Kyrou gets traded. If the Cardinals are in this spot and win both series against the Cubs, it's going to be hard for me to believe, as much as I want the Cardinals to still get what they can for Helsley, they're going to be in a position to where it's like, look, we need to try and compete. Whereas the Blues, if they get an offer to the level of a core member, I don't think Doug Armstrong cares and he'll trade them.
I think I would say it's Helsley. I think the Cardinals, I still believe they're probably going to try and do a little bit of both at the deadline. A little bit of buy, a little bit of sell, probably more of the sell, and think that they can replace some of these pieces internally too, potentially. I just am not sure they're going to get what they want for Kyrou, and that's why I'm hesitant. Like BK said, like right now his bet would be, Kyrou's on the Blues roster. I'm like 75 to 80% that Kyrou's a Blue going into next season.
I think I would go Helsley as well. I think it's really close, though.
Yeah, I think it's like a 50-50 shot right now.
Alex, what do you got?
More likely to happen, regret on the trade or signing. Fans regret the return for Jordan Kyrou trade. Fans regret signing a forward free agent. Could be any forward free agent, too, not just centerman.
I don't think Army is going to make a move for Kyrou that is underwhelming. So I'll say the regret is more likely to be whoever you sign in free agency, because, dude, these guys are about to get paid. So I'll go that direction just because of the years and the dollar signs that could be attached to it.
Yeah, I think it would be the free agent market as well. I think if you see the move for Kyrou, I don't think there's going to be any kind of question about what the return was. Now, you might question what the ceiling of it ends up being, but I don't see that one being regrettable really at all. So I would lean towards the free agent market as well.
Oh, sorry. I thought I already answered it. Yeah, I would say it's the free agent market. I don't think whatever you get in return of Kyrou, you're going to be like, you're going to look at it originally and be like, man, what are they doing? But then when you think about it a little bit more, it's going to be like, okay, I got rid of a guy who just every year scores 70 points. That's it. And I'm getting something that's a different piece that fits into the core. That's the thing. Like, I'm seeing a ton of people say, you can't trade away this guy. You have to be blown away by it. Man, it's not like this guy has produced 100 points. We're talking 30-plus goals and 70-plus points. I think you could get something back in return and be like, yeah, that fits what they're trying to accomplish.
Guys, more likely to be traded. I'll kind of stick with the same theme, a little different. Nolan Gorman or the St. Louis Blues first-round pick?
The first-round pick.
The first-round pick.
That first-round pick feels like a prime candidate to be gone. Like, I know Alex is doing a draft show on Friday night.
Hey, I'm hopeful that it gets traded before, so then we just do an hour.
I'm just not positive the Blues will be selecting on Friday night. The only thing that's holding me back is that the NHL seemingly doesn't value picks this year. Like, so much so that the Rangers were like, just take our pick this year. Like, we'll just make this thing work.
Yep.
So, I'll say more likely to happen.
Day one of the draft has been an area that Doug has made trades for in the past. That's when they made the trade with Braden Shen with the Philadelphia Flyers. That's when they made the trade with Oscar Sundqvist and Klim Kostin from the Penguins. Like, day one of the draft, we've seen, like, it's active. It's just a matter of can they come to a deal. So I'm going to say, yeah, that pick's as good as gone.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. We'll get to a few of these from the text line. More likely to happen, the Blues acquire Noah Dobson or sign Dante Fabro in free agency. Was this person listening to our conversation during the break? It's crazy.
Or Grant's just sending texts via the other room. I'm going to say it's more likely Dobson because it sounds like Fabro and the Columbus Blue Jackets want to come to a deal. And if you're Columbus, you're probably going to have to pay more than what you'd like or more than what he's worth to keep him there. So I'm going to say Fabro goes back to Columbus, so it's more likely Dobson.
I agree. I think it's more likely they trade for a defenseman than they sign one. So, yeah.
I agree with that. I think it's Dobson over Fabro.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. More likely to happen, the Blues trade for a center or sign a center?
Sign a center. I got another name that I'm going to bring up later on in the show.
I've got a couple as well.
Couple?
I don't know that you're
I've seen this market. It is not good enough for a couple.
Oh, they're not fun names, but they're names.
Mine's actually kind of fun. I'm interested to see your guys' reaction.
I would say sign a center. I don't know who the centers they would trade for.
JGP, baby.
Maybe
I'm still
him,
sticking with Pinto from Ottawa or Vegas's guys.
You in this Ottawa thing.
You keep bringing up Pinto. I saw a video yesterday with Brady Kachuk talking about Pinto. Mm-hmm. They're like best friends.
Cool.
Didn't they trade one of his best friends?
They traded his best friend last year at the deadline for another centerman.
They learned from that mistake.
No, I don't think they did because that centerman that they got made them a playoff team.
Yeah,
it's my whole line of thinking with this one. They got a $7 million centerman. They're not going to pay another guy $7 million when he's up for RFA status after this season.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. More likely to happen, the Cardinals sweep the Cubs or they lose the next 2 games against the Cubs?
Oh,
it's Fetty and Palante.
Yeah, they lose the next 2.
Yeah,
I'd be negative, but it's going to be hard to sweep the Cubs.
Boyd on the mound for the Cubs.
Yeah, good luck.
And one of those is a lefty.
And you're not that great
luck.
against lefties either.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say.
I mean, what do you want from me? It's obvious. I think it is.
See, we just jumped off the roller coaster again. Damn it, guys. Stay in your seat.
Well, hopefully they crush Boyd tonight. And then, tomorrow it's Palante versus Imanaga. 1-game sample size. Who knows? And Imanaga's coming off of an extended stretch where he was not pitching at the major league level. Who knows what he's going to look like tomorrow?
He's rested.
That's one way to look at it. That is definitely
arm is strong.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to get into the junk drawer. But next, is Jordan Walker reaching a crossroads, or is this simply another reset for him? We'll talk about that next year in BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Cubs last night 8-7 as they've taken the first 2 games of the 4-game set against Chicago. Game 3 tonight, 6:45 will be first pitch. Matthew Boyd will be on the mound for Chicago. Eric Fetty will get the start for St. Louis. And the Cardinals president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, will join the show at 1:30 today. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet, Johnny Londoff Autoplex, SeaMalondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So yesterday, Ollie Marmol was talking on KMOX about Jordan Walker and whether or not we're at a crossroads right now because, man, the playing time is hard to come by. And this is despite the fact that one of their best hitters is now on the IL, right-handed hitter in Ivan Herrera, which means you have a little bit more flexibility with the DH spot. So here is what Ollie Marmol had to say yesterday on Jordan Walker, here comes the word, runway that the Cardinals have right now for him and what it all means for his playing time.
Yeah, no, it hasn't been easy. It's actually been one of the toughest things to balance throughout the year. I think we've done a good job of balancing runway and opportunity with also playing guys that have earned the right to be in there. When you look at Herrera going down, it does open up a little bit. It sucks because this guy was one of our best bats. But it does open up a little bit of opportunity for other guys to jump in there and show what they're capable of. But when it comes to Burleson, man, like you talk about runway, it doesn't only apply to Gorman and Walker. Like you're trying to find out who can play and who can't, right? And when someone like Burleson steps up and starts to do some of the things that he's doing, and that's regardless of righty lefty, he's just taking a really professional at bat, then he's earned the right to play. We'll match him up to give him the best opportunity to continue to have success. And that goes with Walker and Gorman and the other guys as well. But with Walker, man, like there's a responsibility, and it's dual responsibility on me and my staff as well as Jordan to make adjustments to the league. He's working hard at it. I have to give him credit because it's not like he's sitting around just kind of moping, when am I going to be in there again? He's getting after it defensively and offensively, but we need to start to see some of this kind of come into play. There are guys that are stepping in and doing a really nice job, so we'll continue to give them opportunity. It's not like the runway doesn't end. Is some of the playing time limited based on other guys' success? Yeah. I mean, it has to come at somebody's expense, and that's just the nature of the big leagues. I feel like we've balanced it well. You're looking at him having somewhere around 200 plate appearances at the halfway mark right now, so he's on pace to still get a meaningful amount of at-bats for us to judge what we have and what we don't have going into the next season.
I think the next couple of days are really interesting for Jordan Walker and what the opportunity looks like, especially today. With a lefty on the mound, you would think this is the spot where you get him in there. You would think. But does he give you the best chance to win? He's right-handed, so righty going up against a lefty, you have the platoon advantage there. But on the season, he's batting .200 with a .513 OPS against left-handed pitchers. To put that in context, that is effectively the same OPS on the season as Victor Scott against left-handed pitchers. And Scott would be one of the first players that you would look at and say, all right, well, he's batting .182 against lefties this year. Probably want to sit him down against this specific starter. So I don't know, Alex. I think you can make a pretty strong argument that Alec Burleson, who's batting .290 against lefties on the season, probably gives you a better chance today than Jordan Walker does. I think there's a case to be made that Thomas Adjacey, who's batting .285 against lefties this season, gives you a better chance today than Jordan Walker does to win this specific game. So how do you play this thing out?
I think you play this thing out to where Jordan Walker takes a back seat. And this is coming from, I hate that I'm saying that because I've remained steadfast all season. Jordan Walker should not take the back seat to anybody. He should be in right field all season. But Burleson deserves to be in the lineup every single day. Now, the DH option is there for him, but it seemed, he played great defense last night, and it seemingly he's not a liability out there. Lars Nootbaar, as much as I changed my opinion on that a couple of weeks ago, Lars Nootbaar's bat is hot right now, and you put him in the lineup.
Turns out he's a good player.
Turns out I shouldn't have jumped off board with that
4 years of production was not overstated by 3 weeks.
I think the reason...
I was with you there for a little bit.
It wasn't just Alex.
I'm ignoring the tone.
Symbolic of everybody else.
Yeah, I just take the brunt of just beatings because of it. But I think Nootbaar is older, which is why I would give the edge to Walker. But look, the bat is playing right now. And then it comes down to Walker and Gorman. They play two different positions. And frankly, if Walker's not playing second or Gorman's not playing second base, he's probably your DH because of how well he performs. The problem with all of this for me is that if Walker takes the back seat, and maybe you're still doing work behind the scenes with Jordan Walker, and maybe it can help working with Brant Brown, and they're not out on this. But the problem with this is I feel like as soon as you take the back seat with Jordan Walker, you're going to lose him once again. And if you're trying to make a push for the playoffs and perform in the playoffs and maybe make steps in the right direction, if you're basically making the statement now that Walker doesn't help us get to the playoffs, Walker's not going to be the guy that helps you get to the playoffs in the future. Because if you make the playoffs this year, there's no more runway conversation. We talked about this earlier, where it's like as soon as you meet expectations go to the next level. You're going to be looked at as a playoff team next year. And if Walker's not the guy that helps you get to the playoffs now, he's really not going to be that guy for you next year, which is why it kind of feels like this is it for Jordan Walker. And if you make the decision, I don't know if you're going to get him back to what you hoped he was going to be.
Yeah, that's where we go on differing paths. I still think you could. I think you can have a conversation with Jordan Walker and be like, listen, this sucks, but it's the reality. You're not our best chance to win right now. And if Jordan Walker's being honest with himself, he probably knows that. You can sit him down and look at, these are the numbers. Like, we're not just making this up. This isn't based on, this is a meritocracy right now. We're in a stretch where we're trying to win, and we have to put our best dudes out there right now. We want you to be one of those guys. And our goal right now behind the scenes is to get you there. But much like Gorman earlier this season had to go behind the scenes, down in the cages, working with Brant Brown, working with everybody else to get his swing back on track, that's Walker's current role. Gorman got pushed aside by Donovan and Burleson and Herrera. I think Walker is having the same thing happen right now to him, where other guys are outperforming him by an amount that it's impossible for him to overcome. So could you start him today? Sure, you could. And it's at least possible to explain it away with numbers of like, this actually is a good thing for the matchup. It's possible because it's close enough between him and some of these other options that it's not a huge deal one way or the other. This is really the one chance, though. It's just lefties, where you are effectively in a straight platoon with Jordan Walker, and like you could make the argument that it's Walker/Scott or Walker/Gorman, who, despite some recent success, has been pretty bad so far this season against lefties. It's tough to come up with any opportunity where you're saying like 2 out of every 3 days Walker's in there. It's not happening right now. We have officially reached the spot that T-Bone said eventually we will get here. We're here. Now is the time where that runway opportunity is gone, and now it's about what gives me the best chance to win. This is where we've hit that point.
Yeah, and I even think like there's an argument, like I get what you're saying against lefties of, okay, maybe now you find the spot for Jordan Walker. I'd argue Sajasi's proven enough to get more starts over him than Walker. And that's also about runway too, right? Like that.
Sure.
Why is Sajasi up here? Well, they think they can probably get him enough playing time. Otherwise, I'm not sure Mo would have called him up even when they lost Ivan Herrera. So I don't know what they do. And I think what is fascinating about it is, like you mentioned right now, it's, hey, we got to put our best foot forward, and we need to try and win these ball games. And if you keep winning, when does that spot come to where you look at Walker and say, yeah, you kind of fall into this category? Because I just don't see that coming unless there is a significant drop-off. But my expectation is by the time you see a significant drop-off from one of these bats, you know who's back? Ivan Herrera. Like, I just don't know where this playing time is coming, and I think they're getting caught into this very tough spot again of, okay, well, we need to get some at-bats for Jordan Walker. It's not best, though I agree, yes, it is good to work behind the scenes with Brant Brown and be up here with the Major League staff and working with John Jay on his defense. At some point, though, like, you got to get him in live at-bats against Major League pitching. Like, everything you can do in the cage is great. I've heard about his work ethic. Apparently, it's awesome. You know what's going to determine if he's a big leaguer? If he can hit the slider low and away or lay off the slider low and away. And I think they are getting caught into the spot. And if we're being honest, we talked about if they're going to be buyers at the deadline. You know what they're buying? They should be looking for a right-handed bat that replaces what Jordan Walker's spot on is on the roster. So I think they're getting stuck in a very difficult spot of, okay, if he doesn't have a role to where we are getting him Major League at-bats, what do we do with him? Is it best for him just to stay up here and sit around and do this? Do they have to? And I'm not saying I'm advocating for this, but I think it will become a conversation at some point if he stays out of the lineup for extended periods of time. Do we have to send him back to AAA? Not to learn anything, but just to get at-bats. That is a thing that Mo has said in the past, that he wants to see their prospects continue to play every day.
Can't do it.
There was a 25-game stretch from early May until early June. 25 games. How many times do you think Nolan Gorman started in those 25 games?
2.
Well, more than that. It was 7. 7 times in 25 games.
5 off.
He was off for 18 of those games. This is what I'm getting at, T-Bone, is like, I agree. They have this thing where they want these guys to start regularly. They didn't use that approach with Gorman. They didn't. And the same thing I believe is happening right now with Jordan Walker. I don't know if it'll work. It might fail spectacularly. Maybe this is just what Jordan Walker's going to be. Maybe he's never going to be a productive major league hitter. That's possible, man. Prospects, top prospects even, flame out all the time. The Red Sox just sent down one of their top prospects the other day. He's a guy that everybody in Boston was excited about, and now he's back down to AAA. I saw another one. I can't remember who it was specifically. I'll have to look this up. But another guy that was a top prospect previously, the Mets catching prospect, Alvarez was sent down as well. These guys, a lot of the time, do not work out. That's the nature of the business. So Walker might just be the latest version of that. But if he starts 7 of the next 25 games, it very well may be the exact same thing that they did earlier this season with Nolan Gorman. And it seems like what they did with Gorman worked. He was able to make some adjustments that were necessary to his swing and to his approach. So if they could get something similar with Walker right now, that'd be great. Will he get the same chance eventually as Gorman has been able to? I don't know, man. I really don't know. I do think right now, though, they're at a crossroads of sorts with Walker on how they're approaching him and what the plan is going to be. And I do think tonight is going to be it'll be very telling on how they plan to approach this thing. Because if he's not starting against a lefty, there's very little opportunity there for him.
Yeah, just to T-Bone's point of sending them down to Memphis, to me, if you do that, then the ship is out on Jordan Walker and you need to be done with it. If he goes down to Memphis one again...
If they're not doing that now, I don't think they're planning to send him.
I agree, but you're better off if you feel like he's not a piece of the future for your team. You're better off keeping him up here and trading him at some point than sending him back down to Memphis.
I agree with that.
If you send him down to Memphis, it is a complete failure on the Cardinals' part.
I don't think there's any scenario where it makes sense to send him down. What he needs to learn is up here at the big league level.
Yeah.
He has to learn how to approach things here, and that's not going to happen for you down at AAA. It's same thing with Palante, right? Palante, what he has to figure out is how to get big league hitters out from the right side. You don't get those opportunities at the AAA level. Now, Palante's pitching. Jordan Walker's not playing, but they seem to value, and it seems like there's reason why, what he gets behind the scenes with Brant Brown, with John Jay, with Ollie Marmol. That stuff is all important for him. And frankly, for Jordan Walker, I would imagine he likes that big league check where he's making, $700,000. I'm not saying that to diminish that's not a statement about Jordan Walker. If any of us had the opportunity of being at the minor league level or being at the major league level, we'd take the major league level every day of the week.
Yeah.
Even if that means 2 out of every 7 games we're playing. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to tell you about my friends over at Rhino Shield that can change the outlook of your home, of your business with a fresh new ceramic coating that basically is the eye candy of your neighborhood or of the street that your business is on. And don't just believe me. I used them back in 2020. My wife and I purchased the home. Our house looks brand new today like it did back in 2020 because of Rhino Shield's work. But check out the thousands of reviews that they have over on Google Plus, like this one from Mary. The service we received was outstanding. The appearance of our home after the application of Rhino Shield was perfect. It looked like we had a brand new house. Everyone that has seen our new home has given great compliments and asked who did our work. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. It's engineered to outlast paint, all backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. Call Darren today. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you and schedule your estimate today. 877-25-RHINO or 877-25rhino.com.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so there's been a bit of a hullabaloo about what's going on with the New York Mets.
A hullabaloo.
You
use that word a lot?
I 100% use that incorrectly.
Did you feel confident that you even knew what that word meant?
No, there's been a lot going on behind the scenes in the last couple of segments.
I don't know what's going on.
You know what? I was about to deflect. This is on me. I misspoke.
Of course he was about to deflect.
Is he about to blame me?
Yeah, he was about to blame you.
No. Not blaming you, blaming myself. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So, in New York, people are up in arms over what to call Richard Lovelady. He's a new pitcher for the New York Mets. And they put out a press release yesterday.
Already failing.
Saying, welcome to the Mets, Dickie Lovelady. Allow SNY to explain.
Okay, so there was a controversy yesterday. Maybe controversy is too strong a word, but a misunderstanding. All of Richard Lovelady's friends called him Dickie. Okay. So when the Mets signed him and brought him to the big leagues yesterday, he consulted with the media relations staff, and they asked him, do you want to be known as Richard or Dickie? And so he said, well, everybody calls me Dickie. Call me Dickie. And so the Mets put out a press release saying they'd signed Dickie Lovelady. Right. And then there was a response online about the idea of Dickie Lovelady coming to the Mets. And Richard was not anticipating that kind of reaction. Really? So he went back to the media relations staff and said, you guys can call me Dickie, but for informational purposes, I'm still going to be Richard.
I'm going to play it safe. Call him Richard. That'd be a good move.
You could go like halfway and call him Rich, but that's not his name. And you know, you're not usually the guy who plays it safe.
Oh, 20th year. Very nice.
First of all, I feel awful for that guy. Props to him for leaning into it.
His parents.
Yeah, you can't.
We couldn't have gone with like John.
I feel like, and this is no shot
they did
against
him dirty.
Yeah, this is no shot
Daniel.
against anybody who names their kid Richard.
James.
I feel like you put your kid up for a rough spot when you name him Richard because of how people
Colton.
act.
I don't know anything.
Brandon.
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
Alex.
That's worse.
Your last name's
That's a great
dude.
one.
His last name is Lovelady.
My dad
Like,
used
it
to
was
work with a guy.
already-
My dad used to work with a guy whose name was Richard Cranium. And I'm like, why would somebody do that?
I mean, that's less Lovelady. Like,
No, are you
come
kidding me?
on,
I would take Richard Lovelady over Richard Cranium any day of the week.
I don't know. That's 6 to 1, half a dozen the other. Not feeling great.
I'm not feeling great either way, but one's worse than the other. But
Your parents, like, I'm sure they love you, Richard, but like they really put you in a tough spot here.
here's the thing, though.
You were always going to be a major league pitcher.
I think this is on the PR team.
What do you mean?
Like you can,
They didn't name him?
No, you can ask them like, what do you prefer to go by? You don't put Dickie in the PR
He
release.
said he wanted to be
That's
called
fine,
Dickie.
but we're gonna call you by your professional name, and
They
then if
asked.
you want to be named Dickie, we'll call you Dickie.
Well, this is like a broadcaster going to the St. Louis Blues and going to one of their players and saying, how would you like your last name to be, or your name to be pronounced? Jakub Vrana. And he says, oh, nobody's ever asked me that. I've been in the league for 7 years.
Fine.
Nobody's ever announced my name the way that it is supposed to be announced.
But the
So you
press
go to
release
Richard
should be the
Lovelady.
name of the actual
They
player.
went to Richard Lovelady and said, what would you like to be called? And he said, Dickie. If the player tells you, my name's Dickie, then on the press release, his name is Dickie.
Right, at least go
Hollywood
Richard
Brown, the
Dickie.
wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, Hollywood Brown. His name is Marquise. He goes by Hollywood. So what do you call him? I call him Hollywood. So this gentleman's name is Dickie.
You're wrong on
That's
this one,
you.
Brandon.
He chose it.
You're wrong on this one, Brandon.
He's not wrong.
No.
If you're PR and he says that's what I go by, that's what you have to put.
That's what he goes by, but I'm not going to put it on the press release.
No, I think you have to put it in
Even
the
if I
press
put it in
release.
parentheses of this is his nickname, it's going to say
No.
Richard Dickie Lovelady.
This is his choice. He
This
gets
is like,
to call himself what he wants to be called.
No.
I got to make sure I got this right. I think it's Buster Posey. His first name's not actually Buster. I don't remember what his first name is, but Buster is his middle name, and that's what he decided to go by. So you put that in there. So, like, if he says, yes, I want to go by Dickie Lovelady,
You guys are wrong on
You
this
gotta
one.
go with that.
You guys are wrong on this one.
no, I'm now convinced you couldn't be a PR guy.
No, I can. And you know what? None of this would be taking place.
His name's Gerald.
His name is not Gerald.
Gerald
Posey? Yeah.
Dempsey.
Oh, I thought
Posey.
you meant Richard Lovelady. I'm like, well, why the hell are we even having this conversation?
No, Buster Posey's name is Gerald.
I'd
get why he goes by
go by
Buster.
Buster too.
My dad's name is Harold. So he went by his middle name, which is Anthony. And then in college, he changed his name to Antoine. And eventually he landed on Tony.
I'm glad he was one of the experiment to get
I think
there.
we need to have more of a conversation with your dad. I've
Yeah,
always
how'd you get to Antoine?
Yeah,
That's a
that'd
fair
be my first
question.
question. My
So
entire
he had a rebranding of his own.
apparently he remixed and remastered his own
That's
name.
right.
My entire life, I've been asked, "Is your name Alexander?" And I've had to respond with, "No, it's Alex."
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, Alexander. Can we trust
you in
this
your
recent
face.
Cardinals power surge? We'll talk about that here on BK and Ferrario.
2-1 pitch. Swing, high fly ball, right center. That one's going a long way. We are tied.
That's what it sounded like last night for the St. Louis Cardinals as they hit one of, 100 home runs over the last 2 days alongside Alexander and T-Bone. I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. John Mozeliak, Cardinals president of baseball operations, joins the show in 30 minutes. Alex, the Cardinals hit 4 home runs 2 nights ago against the Chicago Cubs. They hit 3 home runs last night against the Chicago Cubs. I'll go ahead and do the quick math. That's 7 over the course of 2 days. I think they had hit 80 coming into this series.
That's almost 10%. In one game.
In a 2-day stretch, they have hit basically 10% of their home runs on the season. It's remarkable. Yeah, they had 74 coming into this series.
Oh,
and now they hit 7 over the last 2 days.
Yeah,
so literally
that's what we like to hear.
10%. Alex, is this real? They're now tied for 18th in Major League Baseball in home runs on the season. Are they just going to become a home run hitting team? Is it the warm weather has now caught up and now the ball's going to be flying at Busch Stadium? What do you make of this power surge?
I'm not going to sit here and act like they all of a sudden are going to be a top 10 team in home runs by the end of this season. I do think there are certain players that are showcasing their power and that can be sustainable. Lars Nootbaar has shown the ability to have power in his swing. Alec Burleson, we know that. The Nolan Gorman one, as great as that is, again, this seems to be the Nolan Gorman to where it goes in spurts and then disappears. But the Mason Wynn ones, I don't bank on that being a consistent thing because I think Mason Wynn is exactly what we think he is. He's 10 to 15 home runs maybe in a season. I think there are guys that you are seeing the power from that can be sustainable. I think Nootbaar can be this. I think Burleson can be this. We know Wilson Contreras can be this. But as a team, no, I'm not all of a sudden going to be this team just found whatever made the Incredible Hulk, and now they're going to start mashing home runs. I think they're going to be middle of the pack at the end of the season. They won't be bottom, but I don't think they're going to be top half of the league.
Yeah, I think you'll see a slight surge, and that's how I get to about what you're saying there is they'll probably be about middle of the pack in home runs. I don't know if they're going to be bottom 10 because I thought when you looked at their roster and you were seeing what the numbers looked like for them, I'm like, oh, man, I feel like there's more power in Contreras' bat. I feel like there's more power in Nootbaar, more in Burley. And now you're starting to see it. Now that the weather is heated up a little bit, the ball's carrying a little bit more. I agree this isn't going to be something that you probably see in the long run for Nolan Gorman. But if he goes on a hot surge, he can definitely get himself into the 20 home run club. Looking at their roster, to me, they should have 4 to 5 guys that can be 20 home run hitters. And if that's the case, that might be enough.
Contreras, Arenado, Burleson, Herrera, if he was healthy.
Herrera, I would say Herrera / Gorman. One of those two can probably get there depending on how the playing time works out.
And then you probably have something close to 15 between Donovan and Wynn.
Yeah. And if you get that, I would think you'd probably end up being about middle of the pack in terms of home run power. So I'm not saying they're suddenly going to become this home run mashing team. I think they're on a hot streak and they can see a little bit of a surge in their slug here over the next couple weeks.
Is there anybody that you think has the potential to just, compared to what they've done, because we're almost, I think as of tonight, they'll be halfway through, right? Yeah, halfway through the season as of tonight. Is there anybody that you think has a lot more left in the tank power-wise? Based on what we've seen. So I'll give you the numbers real quick. Lars Nootbaar has 11 home runs in what is effectively the first half of the season. Contreras and Arenado are at 10. Burleson is at 9. Herrera is hurt, but he's at 8. Wynn is at 7. Gorman at 6. Donovan at 5. Walker at 3. Scott at 3. Is there any name that I just mentioned that you think, you know what, there's a lot more left in the tank there offensively when it comes to the home run production?
Jordan Walker.
Half?
No, okay. I don't believe that one. Alec Burleson's mine. I think Alec Burleson, to me, can be a 25 home run hitter. If he's playing every day, he makes contact, and you know when he makes contact, it's hard contact. I think Burleson, to me, is starting to show me a little bit of the 20 to 25 home run power.
Mine would be Contreras. I think there's more to give from Wilson Contreras in terms of his home run power. I mean, his career high in home runs is 24, and that was when he was a catcher and he was limited to 105 games. And he's been healthy all year. He's going to surpass that total of games played for sure. To me, he's the one to where he got off to such a rough start to where I think it's pulling down his projections. He's on pace since we're at the halfway point for 20. I could see where he becomes a 30 home run guy. I think he could go on a huge second half surge now that the weather has warmed up.
I still think it's Gorman.
Yeah, I'm not buying into that one.
I'm not saying that I think it will happen. I think he's the guy that has the potential to do it. In the month of June, he has 5 home runs in 18 games. So that's 1 out of every 3 games. You've got 80 games remaining. If he plays in 60 of them, he hits 20 home runs the rest of the year. If he stays on roughly that pace, it's 26 home runs by the end of the season. That really changes the look of this lineup, if he can do that. Would I bet on it? No. Hell no. Absolutely not. No chance. I'm not touching that thing with a 10-foot pole. But is it something that could happen if he plays with some more regularity, especially with, right now Ivan Herrera's out for the next potentially 6 weeks? Yeah, I could see something like that. So Gorman would be the one that I would potentially bet on the most. I agree with you guys. Like Contreras, yeah, he could be. Burleson, he could be. But if we're talking about them really upping the ante, I think you're looking at like an extra 5 home runs for one of them, right? Like Contreras could be a 25-ish home run hitter. You said Burleson 25-ish. Mm-hmm. Contreras is currently on pace for 20, and Burleson is roughly on pace for 20 as well. So you're talking about an extra like 5 home runs there compared to what they did in the first half of the season. If we're talking about Gorman, we're talking about an extra like 15 home runs in the second half of the season compared to what his first half production was. He would be my personal bet. Can we talk a little bit about Noot?
Get ready, ladies and gentlemen. The Tone Ranger is about to show up.
Oh.
So remember when Noot had like a bad 3-week stretch?
Yeah.
And
it was really bad. It might have been like more 6 weeks, but yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just 3. It was bad.
So he had a bad 3-week stretch, and our text line was effectively saying, get rid of this bum, trade him, DFA him, he's got to go somewhere else. It wasn't exactly that phrasing, but it was close to that.
Aggressive.
It was more like, get him on the bench. He shouldn't be starting anymore.
DFA Noot. I don't know if I'd be even listening to those conversations.
Lars Noot is what he is. I think like we came into the season and we were hoping for answers from a lot of these young or relatively young players in the case of Lars Noot. What's the ceiling? What's the potential there? And the big question with Noot is, can he stay healthy? And if he stays healthy, what does the production look like? He's stayed healthy so far this year, knock on wood, but he has thus far. And he's basically been what he's been. He's a 10 to 15% above league average hitter. He adds some value on the bases, not necessarily with a ton of steals, but he's just a good base runner. He's athletic. He adds value with what he does defensively in left field for you. He's just a really good all-around baseball player. And that's it. There's not more there, but there's also not less there. And he's going to go through some slumps. We've seen this in the past. Normally, it's the beginning of the year where he goes through a really extended slump to start. And then the rest of the season, he's just a really nice hitter for you at either batting at the top of your order or where he is right now, which is like 6th or 7th. What does that mean for him in your lineup, Alex? Because I think we've now got pretty much the answers that we were looking for. He's at 1,500 career at-bats. This is who Lars Noot is going to be, most likely.
I mean, what it means for him is, you're going to have you'll have a consistent spot on a Major League Baseball lineup. I think what it means for the Cardinals is you got to find out how many of those guys do you have on your team. Like, do you have 5 Lars Noot on your roster that, whether it's health or cold spells like Nolan Gorman, if they disappear for a long amount of time, can you afford to have 5 of those guys on your team?
Isn't that baseball?
Maybe.
Like this is always
but you can't build 9 spots on your roster. You got to, at some point, have somebody who is there start to finish.
But is that coming at the expense of Noot? Like, I don't know if he is. Maybe this offseason you trade him and that's the spot in the lineup, like left field specifically, that you can upgrade that spot and you get the player that you're talking about, right? Like if Kyle Tucker, for example, they're not doing it. But in that event.
My point with that was like Alec Burleson seems to be much more consistent than Lars Noot.
And again, last year, the second half of the season, he was terrible. And this year, to start off the season, he wasn't very good.
Sure, but I could make the argument of last season was his first real 162-game big league season. You have to figure out how to adapt. I'll be curious what he looks like at the end of the season.
But it was the opposite of that. It was at the end of the year, not the beginning of the year, where he was doing
last year. Yeah, I think exhaustion hit it, and you got to figure out how to maintain the ability to play 162. This year, yeah, he went off to a cold start, but it was also you don't have a mainstay in the lineup. You got to figure out where you're at. Now, he is in the lineup every single day, and they're finding spots for him.
Sure.
We always have the conversation of you've got way too many outfielders and you don't know who's playing where, and it seems like those way too many outfielders you got a lot of guys who are good for 2 or 3 months out of a 6-month season. At some point, you got to find somebody who is a 6-month performer.
Agreed. My point was more of, like, if this is who Lars Noot is, there's value in this. And I think this is what most good baseball players are. Superstars are what you're talking about. They're consistent from start to finish. Like all year long, you can see the stat line, and it's 300, 400, 500. You can write it in pen, and by the end of the season, you're talking about 35 homers or 100 ribbies, just you don't even have to worry about that spot in your order, right? Most baseball players, the good ones even, are kind of like Lars Nootbaar. You're going to go through the ebbs and the flows. Hell, Wilson Contreras is this. He gets hot, and then he goes through a really cold stretch, and you live with the peaks and the valleys because you know by the end of the season, you're going to have a guy that's like 20% above league average offensively. And I think that's Noot. Noot is going to have times where it looks really bad, and there are going to be a lot of times, though, where it looks really good. By the end of the season, 10 to 15% above league average. And that's kind of what you can write. Donovan goes about it a little differently, right? Donovan is very consistent, but he ends at the same point, which is 10 to 15% above league average offensively. So I don't know what that means for your lineup. I don't know where he fits in long term or if he fits in long term, but I do think there's value in knowing what he is now and not having to second guess it anymore of what are we betting on here? What are we potentially trading away here if we decide to go that route? And I think he is one of those chips that could still get you a pretty good return this offseason if you decided to go in that direction. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next here on BK and Ferrario, we do got to talk a little bit more about Jordan Kyrou. How would the Blues construct their lines if they did decide to move Kyrou for a potential young defenseman? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. There's one place to do so. It is Victory Men's Health. Check them out today. They're online at victorymenshealth.com. Let me say that one more time. It's victorymenshealth.com. When you go over there to their website, it's a super easy process to book that first appointment. Put in your name, email, phone number, tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and tell them what it means for you to unlock your inner champion. For everybody, that means different thing. For some people, that's erectile dysfunction. For others, it's those low testosterone symptoms are starting to hit you. It could be 30, could be 40 years old. It could hit early. And when that happens, they can help you out over there at Victory Men's Health. The symptoms are pretty simple. You don't have the same energy as you once did. You're not getting the same amount of oomph out of your workouts. They'll test your testosterone levels, find out where you're at, and then get you back up to the top end of that healthy, normal range at Victory Men's Health. Again, it's a super easy process to book that first appointment today. You can check them out online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, how do the Blues construct their lines if they decide to move on from Jordan Kyrou? Now, there's a lot of getting from point A to point Z here, but let's go ahead and go through this because this is a conversation. I think if you're internal right now, if you're in Doug Armstrong's cognoscenti, you're one of the people that's with him.
Did you use another word that you made up? And didn't you learn from Hubbaloo?
Did you go buy word of the day toilet paper?
Oh, I love that stuff, man.
Bradford's somebody that's in his brain trust. Let's go with that.
Circle of trust.
Then you've got to be thinking about what does our forward group look like in the event that we make a move like this. Alex, how would you look at this?
I mean, barring no other moves, you're weaker. I mean, I had this conversation with JR on the Last Minute Blues podcast. Like, if you trade Kyrou, you're no longer looking for an upgrade at the third line center position. You're looking for an upgrade at the second line center position because I don't know what Shen is. I don't know what Shen is without the two playmakers that are Holloway and Kyrou. Is he still a second line center if it's Holloway and Bolduc, or a Holloway and Snuggerud, or a Snuggerud and Bolduc, or does he dip down to your third line and you're looking to upgrade that second line position? I think where you're weakest, though, is still that center position. I'm not as concerned about the wings if you trade Kyrou for a defenseman. I think the hope is Holloway is that 35 goal scorer, and you believe Snuggerud and Bolduc can contribute to what Holloway did this year, of what you really didn't expect, and it came out of nowhere. And the depth of scoring on the wingers, you've got 5 deep in terms of guys that you believe should be 20-plus goal scorers. And then that third-line winger, maybe it's Dvorsky, maybe it's Texier, Joseph, something like that. So you're weaker on paper, but again, this is kind of a kicking the ball down the field a little bit more. What other moves are being made if you do move on from Kyrou and bring in Dobson? Because my gut tells me you're moving on from Leddy or Falk if you bring in Dobson, which is going to open up either $4 or $6.5 million. And now you're talking about having a decent amount of money if you want to go be players in the free agent market, or if there's another trade to be made.
Yeah, if you move on from Kyrou and Leddy, you're talking about $12 million off of the books. Let's say Dobson is the guy that they get back in this return, right? He makes, let's go on the top end to just make things as hard as possible for the St. Louis Blues. He's going to get $11 million per season. Okay, now you basically just have removed all of the money that you had available from moving on from Kyrou and Leddy. You still have $11 million to play with. So you could then go back to the market. And Alex, I would say there are 2 glaring needs in this scenario. Third line winger and second line center. Because now your second line is not as good. Because right now you have Holloway and Kyrou. And with those 2 on the wing, I feel pretty good about Braden Schitt as my second line center. I don't see any issues with that. If it's Holloway and Bolduc or Holloway and Neighbors, it's fine. I don't feel great about that as a second line, though. I definitely think that's a pretty significant downgrade. And in that event that you bump those guys up, well, now I have Sonny, as of today, Sonny, it's called Bolduc, and Texier/Joseph as my third line. And I don't have a fourth line center. So now I've really got some issues heading into the season. I think you would then be looking to upgrade at center and at wing if you make a move like this.
Yeah, and I don't know.
You have the money to do it.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, I don't know, in that money calculation that you did you put in there the Hofer money of what he could get? Because that's the one.
No, so then you would have about
$3 million for
$7 to $8 million to play with.
So, and then you just decide what happens with Foxa, because if Foxa's gone, Sonny drops down. I don't know if I look at the third line wing as much of a you have to upgrade there. Would you like to? Yes, but I think they would say, well, we think Texier will be fine there. This might be the opening for Dvorsky of, hey, play him as wing for a year so that to do the Thomas treatment so he can work on it at the NHL level. Third line, specifically on the wings, it's not the deepest unless you're the Florida freaking Panthers. So the question is still that second line wing.
No doubt.
I think Bolduc can produce well enough for you, but the question is Shen going to produce without what Kyrou and Holloway had as chemistry?
You said you had a couple of names that would make sense for the Blues in this event.
And it's one that
I had a couple.
Yeah, you had a couple. One that recently, it's a Hubbaloo, man. I get it. Did I use that right? Probably not. The one that came out yesterday from Frank Saravalli, which I actually think I brought up last year at the trade deadline, is Cody Glass from the New Jersey Devils. Former 7th overall pick, was with Nashville and Vegas for the longest time. Last season, he was with Pittsburgh. They traded him New Jersey at the deadline, and he put up 7 points, 14 games played, and was playing the third-line centerman role for you. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. Again, a former 6th overall pick. He might be a reset the market for me season. And if I could go out there and get him, because you're not breaking the bank for this guy. I'm talking probably $4 million would be the max. How many years you go with it, I don't know, but he's 26 years old. So this would be if I trade Kyrou to get a defenseman, can I go out there and sign this piece to make my depth a little bit stronger?
All right, so mine are not nearly as exciting as that one, because that actually makes a lot of sense. He fits into the timeline that they've been talking about.
I was thinking that was the one you found.
No, mine are worse.
Okay.
One of them you've brought up in the past, Nick Bukestad.
Yeah.
He's 6'5", he's 200 pounds, he's fine.
I think he's a fine third-line center.
He's going to produce like 30-ish points for you, and he's going to be okay on the face-off dot. Nothing about this is exciting, but in the event that you just need to put somebody on that third line, I think he could make some sense for them. He's a depth forward. He's probably going to get a couple $1 million. Yeah.
And he's played in the Central Division, so I like that one.
He's a placeholder for Dalibor Dvorsky, basically is what this is. And for 1 year, would you feel comfortable with this guy being your third-line center? I think you potentially could. I've got one other name that I don't think we've mentioned a single time, and then we'll get to John Mozeliak, Cardinals president of baseball operations on the other side. Lars Eller.
Oh, the former Blue.
Could you see the fit? I mean, he's a 30-point producer almost every single season. He's good on the face-off dot. He has a little bit of size that he could bring to the table. I think he could be a third-line center for this team.
To me, he's not an upgrade over Sonny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to me, because I don't think he's that great defensively. And Sonny's upside is at least he's really good defensively. I don't see that as an upgrade over what you have in Oscar Sundqvist. So that one I would be out on. Plus, he just doesn't provide any offense for you as well. Yeah. So
he's like a 10 to 15 goal producer, and he's typically around 30 points in any given season.
And 36 years old. I mean, like, look, if we're talking like a 1 year minimum deal to where
That's
you come
what
in
I'm
and
talking about.
Sure.
These guys are, hey, we went out there, we signed Dobbs into this huge contract. We don't have a ton of money left over. And in this event, maybe you go get a bigger winger, right? Like you trade or sign a winger that can come in and produce what you were hoping to get from Jordan Kyrou. I could see something like that.
Yeah, I would say I would just much rather stay with Oscar Sundqvist than Lars Eller. But, I mean, I could see a path of just bringing in a veteran who could play fourth-line minutes for you if you don't get Foxa back.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, John Mozeliak, Cardinals president of baseball operations, joined the show. You can watch us on YouTube to see that interview in its entirety on youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. John Mozeliak next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Cubs yesterday 8-7 as they've taken the first 2 games of the 4-game set against Chicago. Game 3 tonight, 6:45 will be first pitch. Matthew Boyd will be on the mound for Chicago. Eric Fetty will get the start for St. Louis. And the Cardinals president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, joins BK and Ferrario next year on 101 ESPN. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. SEMALondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by the Cardinals president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, joining us here on the show. Mo, we appreciate the time. Certainly a fun time to be a Cardinals fan with the Cubs in town, winning each of the last 2 games. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing all right. So I just want to start out with this. This has been an interesting season for a million different reasons with the Cardinals. You guys have started out with this runway opportunity for the young guys. I'm curious from your perspective, Mo. We're about halfway through the season now. What is the biggest thing that you have learned about your group this year?
Well, I think we went into it with the whole purpose of trying to get a better understanding of really what do we have with these players. And, I don't think it's been a, perfect answer in terms of getting to understand where guys are. For example, if you think about Nolan Gorman, here's a guy that most recently has gotten off to a very hot start, or he's playing really well at this moment in time. Prior to that, really we're struggling to find him at bats and really giving him an opportunity. But now he's getting that, so that's good. Jordan Walker obviously has been, the season started a little bit slower than maybe we had hoped. And then as he started to catch on, that was a good thing. But just now it's going to really become, that ability to be consistent with some of these players. And that's the task of Ollie, which is a tough task, is, trying to find that right balance of who to play, when to play. But, overall, I think when you look back at what we were trying to accomplish with this club, the good news is we're getting to see what we have, and we're playing really well. And that's excellent.
John, I feel like when you want answers on those certain players, the goal is to have a decision kind of maybe at the end of that season of saying, hey, do we feel like this guy fits into what our plans are moving forward? Do you feel like you can get answers on those 2 players specifically because of their age and Gorman and Walker at the end of one season?
Well, I think they're young, and you got to keep reminding yourself that they're young. And so trying to be patient with them is probably in everybody's best interest. But seeing, watching Nolan Gorman over the last couple of weeks, that's really encouraging to see. He's getting his hits. He's getting his hits to all fields, but still showing power, and that's a great balance. And so, ultimately, I think we're able to do what we set out to do this season, and I think players are taking advantage of it, and that's great to see.
Mo, when you look at Jordan Walker, especially right now, you guys are 8 games above 500. You're playing against the division rival that's at the top of the division. It's hard to find that playing time for him as his bat has slowed. How do you view this part of your schedule when it comes to that runway and opportunity versus, putting out the guys every single day that you think give you the best chance to win on that specific day? It's a tough spot for Ollie.
No, it is. It is a very tough spot. That's the challenging part of being a manager. But I think we're trying to balance opportunity with trying to win games. And I think Ollie's done an amazing job doing that. Obviously, as we enter today, there's going to be some decisions we have to make, in terms of what our roster looks like. But ultimately, I think it's the young players are taking advantage of what they're getting the opportunity to do. And that was what we hoped to see.
Because those young players, Mo, is taking those opportunities and run with it, the whole description of this season being a runway for these players, do you feel like that maybe that mindset has shifted for you in the front office as this season has gone on?
Not really. We went into this offseason wanting to give these guys a chance to play because we believed in them. I mean, we thought we were going to be good. I don't walk down the clubhouse and the mindset isn't that we're going to lose today. The mindset is we think we're going to win today. And, you know, if we really wanted to just blow this thing up, we would have made a lot of different trades this offseason. We would have moved on to players that are going to be free agents at the end of this year. But ultimately, we thought with the young core we had, the balance of those veterans, it made sense to give them this chance to play.
Mo, we're talking to John Mozeliak, Cardinals president of baseball operations here on 101 ESPN. I mentioned yesterday on social media that we were going to be having you on the show today. And as you can probably imagine, some of the responses were basically, and this was not about you, this is about us. We're going to ask you exclusively soft questions. And so it's not exactly going to be a hard-hitting interview. So I'll ask you one of the questions that they wanted to ask, and I'm curious your response. They said, are you guys going to have the guts to ask Mo if he regrets not trading Helsley in the offseason? So I'll go ahead and ask you, Mo, do you regret not trading Helsley in the offseason, especially coming off of last night's performance?
Softball, BK.
I do not. You know, I think, you know, he's a part of the reason why we are where we are. You know, obviously the next 6 weeks are going to really dictate how we look at the trading deadline and really where are we in that mix. But, you know, I think, like, our fans, like, it's hard to get the right answer to appease everybody. I mean, there's certainly a group of our fan base that wishes that we had just blown it up, except we're not going to win a baseball game for 2 years and then hopefully then charge. But when you look at the parity in baseball right now, doing that blow-up model is very difficult to get yourself back. And, you know, when you look at our club and the way we're constructed, where we do have some veterans, we do have some guys that are in their mid to later 20s, and then we have guys like in their early 20s. It's really a pretty good mix. And now, you know, when you start looking at 2026 and beyond, you know, how do we augment that? But we're going to have a lot better idea, or really Chaim and his group are going to have a lot better idea on how to do that based on what we're learning this year. And that's really the best takeaway. And the fact that we are putting out a competitive club every night, an entertaining club every night, you know, I hope the majority of our fans appreciate that.
I think for some of those fans, Mo, that say, hey, blow it up, the reason why is when you get to the bottom of the standings, you have that potential for the #1 pick, which hopefully becomes a superstar, right? That's the hope, at least. And that doesn't mean it works, but it's the hope. In your shoes, you've been here with the Cardinals for 17, 18 years as the head man. How do you think moving forward, for Chaim's team, this will be their task, how can you acquire that superstar if you are consistently in contention and you're hoping to consistently win 90-plus games and you're not willing to go to the top of the market or not able to go to the top of the market the way that it is now to spend, you know, $50 million a year for those superstars? How can a team, a market like St. Louis get that superstar without going to one of those ends of the spectrum?
Well, I think that's obviously the challenge in the modern game. You know, the St. Louis market is 26 amongst 30, so it's you know, we've always punched above our weight, but part of the reason we were able to punch above our weight was because we had enormous attendance and support. Now, as we look at the game moving forward, yes, we picked 5th this year. Is that a guaranteed superstar? No. Is it more exciting to pick 5th than 25th? Sure. I think probably the average pick we've had in my tenure is probably somewhere around 21, for example. The last 2 years are the first time under my tenure that we've actually picked in the top 10. So, you know, you also have to be, like, fortunate along the way, right? Because when you think back over the last 20 years, why are the Cardinals where they were? I mean, we had, actually I should say the last 30, because you throw in McGuire. And the entertainment value of that home run race allowed the Cardinals to do more things than maybe if we hadn't had him. In other words, attendance spiked, and the interest in the Cardinals and really baseball was just thriving. And then in 1999, we draft someone in the 13th round by the name of Albert Pujols. And then the following year, we draft a guy in the 4th round by the name of Yadier Molina. And neither of those are top 5 picks like you're referencing. And so you have to have some fortune, good fortune, to allow yourself to do what we've done for the last 25, 30 years. But having said all that, you are who you are now. And we have a really good group of young major league players right now. We have a pretty exciting group of young players that are on the cusp of being in the big leagues. And I really think from a scouting standpoint with the amateur draft, Randy Flores and his group have done a really good job. And I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do with this year's group. But blowing it up, and you guys can look, there's a lot of teams that have blown it up and have not gotten back on track. So I'd rather consistently compete every year, at least go out there with that intention, and then try to augment accordingly.
Mo, when you look at baseball today, do you believe teams can be successful without having a superstar on their roster?
No, it's hard. But superstars come in all different shapes and sizes, right? It's not simply what you're paying them. It's really about what kind of contribution you're getting. And in our case right now, somebody like a Brendan Donovan right now, he might not be a household name in the game of baseball, but he is playing like a big-time all-star. And when you look at like where Ivan Herrera was from an offensive standpoint, maybe arguably one of the top 10 bats in baseball right now. So like where it comes from, what it looks like is different, but it really comes down to, are you getting consistent production from your better players?
Couple minutes left with John Mozeliak, Cardinals president of baseball operations, joining us here on BK and Ferrario, and we sincerely appreciate his time. You can check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. Mo, Matthew Liberatore is somebody that I wanted to make sure that we asked you about, because his season has been honestly nothing short of impressive. He's a young player that you guys obviously believed in, and you gave him this opportunity in the rotation. He hit a little bit of a bump where it was a couple of starts, the velo goes down, the results don't look as good, and then he's looked great in his last 2 outings. What have you learned about Matthew Liberatore as a starting pitcher in 2025?
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most excited about was how he showed up to camp. He was driven, he had ambition, and he wanted to be in our rotation, and he earned that spot. As you guys both know, if we were talking about what his role would have been back in January, I probably would have said in the bullpen. So just to see how he positioned himself for the success he's having now, I'm not surprised, but it needed to happen, and it did.
Mo, you want to go back to the prospect pool, the pipeline that you were talking about. That was an area of topic for a lot of fans at the beginning of the season, trying to strengthen that minor league system for the Cardinals. Where do you feel like the strength is at in terms of your pipeline today?
Well, I think, you got to see McGreevy a few times this year already. I think you can all imagine him being a regular in the rotation moving forward. Obviously, Matthews was named minor league pitcher of the year. He's stumbled a little bit this year, but I think you got to bleed a little bit on your journey to the big leagues, and that's happening. So I do think he's somebody that is going to be a major contributor at some point at the major league level in the near future. Pointing more towards 2026, of course. But overall, I just feel like we're starting to see some depth. Even like somebody like a Baez that's now at AA, who last couple of years had a ton of swing and miss, but all of a sudden it's starting to click for him. So I do think there's a lot of talent in our system, and I'm excited about it because I really do believe the Cardinal future is very bright. Does that mean, to an earlier point that you guys had asked about, like, where are we in the free agent market? The Cardinals have always used the free agent market to augment what we don't have. Sometimes it's not the most exciting strategy in the world, but it has served us fairly well over time. And as I think we look at the game and where it's going, I think ownership understands that at some point they are going to have to, either, if we don't develop it, then you got to find it. But in the meantime, we're going to keep looking.
Mo, final question that I've got for you. Tomorrow, our producer, Tanner Hendrickson, and I do a Cardinals podcast, and we've got Rob Cerfolio joining us in studio for that, to talk to him about what's going on in the minor league side of things. For you, I know that was a lot of the focus in the offseason was on that minor league side of things. Away from just an individual player, what's the biggest development that you've been excited by with what you guys have been able to do at the minor league level this year?
Yeah, I think obviously we're trying to modernize a lot of the processes that you're seeing throughout the game of baseball. But I would say the one thing that definitely stands out is how we think about pitching, and in terms of really trying to optimize someone's strengths, if you will. And I really think these guys have done a good job of implementing that process. I think players are buying into it, and we are seeing some really positive results from it. So, it's been very exciting to watch that grow.
Mo, you're not wearing that jacket outside right now, are you?
Well, I had a couple interviews, so I had it on, and I do have to run down to the clubhouse right after this. I'll probably keep it on, but then after that, I'll take it off.
God bless you, Mo, because that shirt's got to be soaked wearing that jacket.
I've got a T-shirt and shorts on today, and that might be too much. It's absurd out there. Mo, thanks for the time today, man. Thanks so much. We look forward to seeing you at the park soon. Enjoy the game tonight.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mo.
And Sean Mozeliak joining us here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate his time. Cardinals president of baseball operations. A lot to react to from that interview. Alex, your biggest takeaway, and we'll react to more on the other side, was what?
I think it was what he said there at the end in terms of ownership understands that, like, look, if we can't develop this player, you're going to have to go out there and find him. And that's kind of why I asked how you win, if you can be successful without a star. And he said it's very difficult. Maybe they've got some of those in-house that aren't labeled superstars but can perform like MVPs. We're seeing a Brendan Donovan. But mine was, if ownership understands, like, look, at some point, you can want to play this model, but at some point it may not work, and we're going to have to go do what teams around us in the National League are doing.
Totally agree with you. T-Bone, for you, and I know you've got other stuff going on back there where you're editing audio, but your biggest takeaway from our conversation with Mo was what?
I think mine was what you guys just referenced, is the fact that he says, hey, look, ownership knows that he makes it seem that they will be potentially players in free agency, maybe not next year, maybe 2 years down the road, but he doesn't seem like a guy that seems like, hey, this is the threshold for what the Cardinals are going to be spending. He seems to think, hey, if we have a problem, we got to go fix it, and we still want to be competitive. I loved how he brought it up. Hey, look, we could have torn this down too. There's still teams that are trying to get out of that are still stuck down at the bottom. I like the fact that he said, hey, we're trying to remain competitive still, and also if ownership sees that we need something, they know that, hey, we've got to go out and spend and go get it.
That's where I'm at. I felt the exact same way on it, and like I was half-heartedly asking the question about the Helsley thing. I think they don't regret trading or keeping Ryan Helsley. I think if you look at the way that they spent their offseason, I think they feel like they did things right.
Yeah, well, the Arenado one too. Like, you could kind of put Arenado's name in Helsley. Like,
and
maybe
they tried to trade Arenado.
Yeah, but it's not so much do they regret like not trading him, but it's looking at it and saying we would be in a much different position if we traded Nolan Arenado.
100%. If they had moved one of Sonny Gray, Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras, hell, even
Miles Michaelis.
Yeah, Michaelis or
Fetty,
Helsley, and if they didn't add Maton, this team would look very different if any of those moves went a different direction. So I don't think they have any regrets about that. Now, we'll see what happens as we get closer to the deadline. He mentioned it. Like, they haven't made their decisions on that yet. How could you? You're still 5 weeks away from the Major League Baseball trade deadline, and they're in it enough to where they're going to have to make a real decision, possibly. But the next 5 weeks will dictate that. So I found that to be really interesting as well. We'll talk more about that, preview tonight's game coming up here on BK and Ferrario. Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page after the show today, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. That is all sponsored by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is free to download, super easy to use, and it is sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. You can always see us as well on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. That is where John Mozeliak joined us just a little bit ago, so if you missed any of our conversation with him, I highly recommend checking that out after the show today. Talked a little bit about Jordan Walker, where he stands with everything, Gorman, the opportunity that exists for him right now, why he likes where this team is at right now, and what the future holds for them when it comes to potentially adding a superstar. I thought all of that was really interesting. Alex, let's preview a little bit what we're going to see tonight. Fetty on the mound for the Cardinals, going up against Matthew Boyd. Boyd is a left-handed pitcher, and he's been very good for the Chicago Cubs this season. What are you anticipating in this one? First of all, do you think Walker will be in the lineup? And second of all, what are you expecting from the Cardinals overall?
I expect Walker in the lineup for this one because I don't think he's going to play against Imanaga tomorrow. So I'm expecting him to play in this one tonight. I really don't know what I'm expecting in this one because I didn't expect them to, and they didn't blow them out of the water, but I didn't expect the Cardinals to be able to put up 8 runs yesterday in that matchup against the Cubs. I think the Cardinals win this one, too. They just seem like a confident bunch right now with their offense. I think Gorman is the odd man out in this one tonight. I think he comes out, but that keeps Burleson and Noot in against the lefty, and you see Jordan Walker enter the lineup. And I'll say Cardinals win this one 6-3.
Interesting. T-Bone, do you think Walker's in the lineup, and how do you think this one goes?
I don't think Walker's in the lineup tonight. I think they will keep him out because they want to give themselves their best chance to win. I think tonight they will lose. I think they will drop one in this series, and they'll have to see if they can take 3 or 4 on Thursday.
I think they lose this one as well. I've got a 5-2, so almost the reverse of what you said, Alex. I think you will see Walker in the lineup. I think what they're going to do, I still believe they want to see more of him. I think you see him once in each of the next 3 series. Tonight against the Chicago Cubs, against the lefty that's expected to start against Cleveland, and then Heaney starts with Pittsburgh as well. So you'll see him against each of those 3 lefties, and if he gives you reason to believe, maybe you see him more as we get further along if somebody else drops off. But I think you'll see him tonight. I think the Cardinals lose this one. I hope the opposite happens because that would be a hell of a lot of fun to watch if the Cardinals are able to win each of the first 3 games of this series. Again, if you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page after the show today. We will be talking with Rob Serfolio tomorrow on our podcast. You can check that out, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Alex is a brand new edition of the Last Minute Blues podcast that you can see over there as well. So plenty of content for you guys over on the YouTube page.
We're going to have Tim Taylor on tomorrow, who's an assistant GM he was in charge of the prospects for the Blues in terms of amateur development. So Tim Taylor's going to join us tomorrow at 12:30 to preview the draft and the Blues pipeline.
Love to see it. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.